There's the information I just described at the moment does not appear particularly indicative of targeting in its own right. But again, that dot, once we get other information, could connect in a way that might be more meaningful. But I'm sharing that piece of information with this committee and with the American public, but I think it's important that we put down a qualification. This does not appear to be some kind of target list or something like that. This is cached images from running searches of news stories. And again, there's nothing at the moment there's no pattern from that particular piece of information that is overly remarkable so far.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from California is recognized.
Mr. Director, you previously told us that you consider the situation on the southern border to be a massive security threat to our country. Is that still your assessment?
I stand by my prior testimony. And in fact, just in the last month or so, we've done, conducted a significant series of arrests. I say we, our Joint Terrorism Task Force is working with ICE of a number of individuals with suspected international terrorism ties. And I have also been very vocal about the fact that since the last time I appeared before you, that we are increasingly concerned about the possibility, not just of a foreign terrorist inspired attack, which is very much a concern, but even the potential for a coordinated foreign terrorist attack, perhaps like what we've seen against the concert hall in Russia, for example, but just here in the United States.
Well, the 19 suicide bombers who overstayed visas were responsible for 3,000 American deaths on 9/11. What's your best estimate of the number of foreign terrorists who are now in our country?
I don't know that I could give you that number. What I can tell you is we have lots of foreign terrorism related investigations, but that doesn't mean that all of them came in illegally or anything like that.
It seems to me that the simplest act of terrorism would be for dozens of guerrillas to attack low security, high density venues, for example, Friday night high school football games all across the country at the same hour with bombs and automatic weapons. That would produce thousands of casualties from coast to coast in a matter of minutes. How likely is such a scenario?
Well, what you're describing would require, of course, a lot of coordination. But what I will tell you, and I think you're onto a particularly important point from my perspective, which is that unlike the 9/11 attacks, which, again, I was in FBI headquarters on the day of 9/11, and so I remember it vividly, and I've spent plenty of time in the period after that in my prior positions engaged with the families and the victims. But what we're seeing more and more with the foreign terrorist threat, and frankly, also the domestic terrorism threat, is a focus on kind of like what you're talking about, well, what I would call soft targets, which is really for the American people's benefit, just intelligence community speak for where everyday people live their everyday lives.
What terrorist groups have now infiltrated our country that you're tracking?
Well, I don't know that I would say infiltrated. We have investigations as we speak that relate to we have investigations as we speak that relate to Al-Qaeda. We have investigations as we speak that relate to Al-Shabaab. We have investigations as we speak that relate to the Iranian proxies, Hezbollah, and so frankly, even the IRGC Quds Force itself.
What foreign criminal gangs are now in our country that you're most concerned with?
Well, foreign criminal gangs, we obviously have investigations, a lot of investigations into, gangs like MS-13, for example, and some of its counterparts. Although I think if you were to talk to most chiefs and sheriffs like I'm doing every week, we shouldn't underestimate how prevalent neighborhood gangs are, really. It's a lot of the gang violence.
I'm concerned about those that we've allowed in through the southern border and what threat they are now posing. Do you believe that the vetting performed at the southwest border is adequate to ensure that aliens with terrorist or criminal gang ties are not being released into the United States?
Well, it's not really for me to speak to the vetting. What I would tell you is that
you have to deal with it once they're released in the United States.
And one of the concerns that I have which I touched on briefly in my opening, is there's been a lot of focus on the number of known or suspected terrorists encountered at the border, and that number has increased over the last 5 or 6 years, and that should be of concern. But frankly, to me, the bigger concern is individuals who weren't either weren't on the watch list at the time they came in because there wasn't information known yet that ties them to terrorism, and it's only after they get in that some new piece of information develops somewhere overseas, and now we know. That's a bigger concern.
We've been warned that they basically vet against a blank sheet of paper. If they don't have a record in this country, Border Patrol probably doesn't have any record. They're released into the country, and you find out later of the dangers.
Right, or if they use fake documents and there aren't biometrics to connect them. Sometimes there are people who come in who, because of the nature of the threat information that puts somebody on the watch list, there wasn't, fingerprints from the person at the time, because not every piece of intelligence comes with fingerprints. So then the guy comes in using fake ID,
and of course,
there's no reason to connect them.
And of course, the 2 million gotaways, absolutely nothing about.
Exactly. Well, I don't know about absolutely nothing, because we may come across them in other things. I mean, one of the key parts of our collective defense here is that we work with 800,000 sworn law enforcement across the country, and we train them on the right questions to ask and things like that, so that we can build in additional eyes and ears if they, do a traffic stop or whatever happens to be. We run a greater chance of leveraging all that to pick up people who may have slipped through the cracks.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from California is recognized.
Director, we're about 100 days until the election. Russia has attacked our democracy in past elections. Are they seeking to do it in this one?
We assess that the Russian government continues to want to influence and in various ways interfere with our democracy, with our electoral process. In fact, just in the last few weeks, we announced a significant disruption of a generative AI enhanced social media, bot farm, essentially, of the Russians that was designed to be an influence operation, and some of the fictitious profiles of those bots purported to be U.S. persons. So they're still at it. We've seen that in election cycle after election cycle.
Do the Russians have a preferred candidate?
I'm not sure that I could speak to that here, but certainly what I would tell you is it's not just the Russians, and I think that's important for people to know too. There's a lot of attention to the Russians, as there should be, but we also know, you may recall that in 2020, Director Ratcliffe and I announced an effort by the Iranians to try to interfere, and then more recently, we've had indictments related to China. 34 Chinese MPS officers creating fictitious personas, posting false information online, full of narratives designed to sow divisiveness, discord, undermine us. And I'm talking about narratives that they were pushing, again, purporting to be Americans, but actually Chinese MPS officers. For example, trashing any suggestion that COVID came from a lab leak, or trashing U.S. law enforcement on the occasion of the anniversary of George Floyd's death.
And shifting to the attempted assassination on the former president, I want to make it clear, in America, violence has never been the answer. Not on a certain day in January or a recent day in July. And I just want to go through the shooting just briefly with you. How many armed officers were within the perimeter, just ballpark figure?
That really goes to the security posture, which is the subject of the DHS Inspector General's review, and the outside panel, independent panel that's
Would you say probably more than 100, though?
I have to believe that number, but I don't have that number at my fingertips. Our focus is on the shooter and his attack.
And the shooter was able to get 8 shots off before he was killed?
That's what it would appear, yes.
Type of weapon used by the shooter was an assault rifle?
Was an AR-style rifle.
So that means one trigger pull, one round. Is that right?
Essentially.
you like to shoot?
Do I?
Yeah.
Yeah, yes.
Do you know the difference between an AR and a bolt action rifle?
I'm not going to try to sit here and engage on sort of firearms expertise, but I've fired a variety of weapons. But
had the shooter used a bolt action rifle, would that have been one trigger pull, one round?
that's my understanding.
Would there had to have been more? Well, on an assault rifle, trigger pull, round, bolt action, non-assault rifle. What's the difference? Is it faster, slower?
He was able to get more rounds off more quickly than he would have with other kinds of weapons.
And that's my point, is that we can add additional resources to protect political candidates, and we should. The people who went to that rally deserved to be protected from gun violence, just like the students at Parkland deserve to be protected from gun violence, just like the babies at Sandy Hook deserve to be protected from gun violence. So we'll devote more resources. We've added a presidential candidate who is also now protected. But if we're being honest with ourselves, we have armed this country to the teeth. And we have allowed the most dangerous people to have access to the most dangerous weapons. I say that as a parent of a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old, the two oldest who have done multiple mass shooter drills in their classrooms. I say that as a brother to 2 police officers who walk a very violent beat. And I say that as an elected official who believes that my colleagues deserve to be as safe as I deserve to be when we are at political rallies. And so we really need to step back and think, if we allow these weapons to be in our country, can we truly protect our elected officials, and can we truly protect, most importantly, our children and the next generation? I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. It is good to have Mr. Massey back with us today. Some of us had a chance to go to Kentucky over the last few weeks and visit with Thomas and his family and hear all kinds of wonderful stories about Rhonda. Amazing lady, gentle spirit, and we're glad to have Mr. Massey back with us. And the next 5 minutes belong to you, Congressman.
Thank you, Chairman. Director Wray, how many counter snipers were present at the rally that day, and which of the counter snipers took the shot that took out the would-be assassin?
I don't have the number of counter snipers. I know it was a Secret Service counter sniper who took the shot that eliminated the shooter. We've conducted a number of interviews, including of him.
So was it one of the 2 that we see in the videos on top of the roof, or was it a different location that was shot?
I'm afraid I don't have that at my fingertips here.
Okay. You mentioned that the would-be assassin bought a 5-foot ladder. You have a credit card evidence of that, but it looks like on the scene there was a larger ladder that he might have used. Do you know which ladder he used to get to the roof? And do you have possession of that 5-foot ladder and the other ladder? And do you know how the taller ladder got to the scene?
So this whole business about the ladder is something we're drilling into more. We do have possession of the 5-foot ladder that he purchased close in time to his attempted assassination. That we've traced the purchase of that ladder from a receipt, a bloodied receipt that he had on him at the time his body was recovered on the roof. We do not yet know for sure how exactly he got up on the roof. We're looking at, various forensic pieces to try to kind of piece that together. So more to come on that.
Do you know where the 5-foot ladder was found or retrieved? Was it near the roof, or was it still in his vehicle?
Neither. I don't have it in front of me, but I know that it was not. I know that it was not on scene, and I know that it was not in his vehicle. But we can circle back to you and get to that.
Is there any evidence at all that he may have been in contact with somebody else before this occurred that may have had any prior knowledge or may have helped him plan this event?
Well, needless to say, that is a question that we're intensely focused on, because that would obviously be incredibly meaningful. So far, underline, so far, we have not found any evidence of any accomplices or co-conspirators, foreign or domestic.
And you're using geolocation data to see if his cell phone was near another cell phone, I presume?
Right. We're doing lots of different kinds of cellular analysis, geolocation stuff, looking at his accounts. He, from everything we've seen, which is consistent with what we've learned in interviews, a lot of people describe him as a loner. That does kind of fit with what we're seeing in his devices. His list of contacts, for example, is very short, compared to what you would normally see from most people. So it doesn't appear to be a whole lot of interaction between him, face to face or digital with a lot of people.
Okay, thank you.
That doesn't mean there's not we're trying to talk to anybody who's had any engagement with him whatsoever, digital, in person, classmates, coworkers,
right,
et cetera.
Appreciate that. And now I want to talk about another possible assassination attempt. And I'll start by showing a video of President Biden. And this is from recently. This is in the last month. We can play that.
Gallows erected to hang the Vice President, Mike Pence. I think it's fair to say it's one of the darkest days in the history of America.
Okay, and he's referring to January 6th. Were there gallows erected to hang Mike Pence, as the president says here?
I'm not aware of any physical gallows. I can't remember whether, from a demonstration perspective, there may not have been some kind of replica or symbol of something like that.
That's my impression. Can we show? Can you raise that up so you can see it? It looks like there was some kind of prop that was built. The construction doesn't look like it lends itself to actually hanging somebody. It's more of a prop, I think, as you suggested, that was erected on January 6th. But if the president were correct that these gallows were erected to hang Mike Pence, that would be a very serious allegation, wouldn't it?
I would take it very seriously, yes.
Has anybody been arrested, or do you have any leads in conjunction with the erection of this gallows? We had a picture here on the screen, if you can show it again. It was just up there. There's an individual here who's seen near these gallows. Has he been arrested? Have you identified this person?
I don't know that I could speak to this specific person or the gallows that are pictured on the image. We have had, I think, 850 people who have pled guilty to federal crimes related to January 6th, and I think another 180, I think it is, convicted at trials. So I can't be sure.
And some of them merely for going into the Capitol, but here the president suggests that individual intended to hang Vice President Pence, which seems like kind of a wild claim myself, given the construction of those gallows. But if we are to take him seriously, or even if we aren't, let me just finish by saying this. If you have no leads, or you're not sure if anybody who erected those gallows was arrested or is being investigated, were there any confidential human sources involved from the FBI or any other agency in the erection of that prop, those gallows?
I'm not aware of anything like that.
All right. Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentlelady from Washington is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome, Director Wray. Political violence of any kind is dangerous, unlawful, and totally unacceptable. Just as we all watched and then unequivocally condemned the attempted assassination attempt on our former president, I wish that we could all come together to unequivocally condemn the act of political violence on January 6th, instead of defending props that were used, that were harmful, dangerous props of gallows, attempting to show what people wanted to do to Vice President Pence. Extremists attempted to subvert our democracy in the worst assault on the U.S. Capitol since the War of 1812. Many of us were trapped in the gallery that day. We feared we would not make it out. Insurrectionists were chasing down former Speaker Nancy Pelosi and then Vice President Mike Pence. And I myself have been the direct target of political violence when an armed man with a gun showed up at my door, threatened me and my family, and we actually ended up having to move our home. So I understand the increased tenor of political violence that is racking our country. It has been on the rise, fomented by violent and dehumanizing rhetoric from top public officials, including the former president and members of Congress, sadly, and bolstered by the proliferation of easily accessible guns, including assault-style weapons. All of this violence is unacceptable, and I wholeheartedly condemn it. I just hope we condemn all of the violence, not just one or two incidents. Mr. Wray, today I want to focus on the role of the FBI and the need for the Bureau to remain politically neutral and independent. The FBI cannot and should not be subject to the whims of any president. The majority apparently doesn't think that the FBI needs to be politically neutral and independent. They want an FBI subordinate to the president, not accountable to the American people. That is one part of a larger plan to undermine our democracy, to remove the checks and balances that have protected us, and ultimately to subvert our freedoms. That agenda, promulgated by the former president, his loyalists, and their MAGA allies, is called Project 2025. It is publicly available online. I encourage everyone who's watching this to Google it. It includes plans to undermine every part of our government, including the FBI. Trump's Project 2025 agenda says that the director of the FBI must not be independent of politics, but instead must do whatever the president orders. Under Trump's Project 2025, Trump loyalists would undermine the non-political and independent structure of the FBI. Project 2025 openly calls on the next conservative administration to support, quote, a vast expansion of the number of political appointees in every office across the DOJ, especially the FBI. And so, Mr. Wray, given your extensive experience as a law enforcement professional at DOJ across multiple Republican and Democratic administrations, why do you think it's important that the FBI maintain political independence from the president?
I think the FBI is and needs to stay independent, and that means protecting American people without fear or favor, upholding the Constitution and the rule of law, and it means following the facts wherever they lead, no matter who likes it. And I add that last part because the essence of independence and objectivity is not that an investigation is going to always yield the result you want. Our independence and objectivity can't only be respected when you like the outcome. That's the very essence of objectivity. Sometimes you're going to like the result, sometimes you're not going to like the result. And that applies to everyone, including us. Any number of times we're disappointed and frustrated by the results of our investigations. But the alternative is an erosion of the rule of law, where the only thing that distinguishes one investigation from another is power. And that's what you see in some of authoritarian countries around the world. So I'm not familiar with this particular
No, I didn't ask you to
Project
comment on that.
2025 thing. I don't know anything about it, but what I can tell you is, from my perspective, the FBI needs to be functioning as independent. Doesn't mean it's not part of the executive branch. It doesn't mean the FBI director doesn't serve at the pleasure of the president, but it does mean that the way we do our work
has to be objective.
Has to be independent.
Yeah, thank you. I have another question about the role of attorneys at the FBI Office of General Counsel. How do we protect that work?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
The role, what role do the attorneys at the FBI Office of General Counsel play in ensuring that the Bureau respects the constitutional rights of American citizens? How do we protect that work?
So, in my experience, the lawyers in the Office of General Counsel play an incredibly important role in ensuring that our agents have their questions about how to comply with the law and conducting their work answered, and ensuring that we conduct.
Very quick, breaking news. Ukraine tells China it's ready to negotiate with Russia on the peace deal. Could it be that somebody have talked to Trump over the phone? Maybe. I'm just saying it's on top or in the purple pin, so please share. It's solid news. We are going to a better world. Go ahead.
In regards to the southern border and what is happening down there, has the border situation improved in terms of your assessment with the security of Americans since you were last here in December?
Well, I guess a couple things, and I appreciate the question. So first, the blinking lights comment that I made refers more broadly to the threat environment that I'm seeing as FBI director across a wide range of threats. Contributing to that in a variety of ways are the threats that emanate from the border. So it's not a comment just on the border issues. It's the threat environment that we face more broadly, in my experience in law enforcement. I am increasingly concerned that foreign terrorists could seek to exploit vulnerabilities at our southwest border or at other ports of entry or in other aspects of our immigration system to facilitate an attack here in the United States. I think that is something we have to be concerned about. There's been a lot of focus on numbers of this, numbers of that, and I understand that. But as I think was referenced in an earlier question, it doesn't take very many foreign terrorists to be a real problem. We had 19 hijackers responsible for the 9/11 attacks. And we just not that long ago had a case, some of the members of the committee will remember, where we charged an individual for trying to smuggle individuals in to assassinate former President Bush.
Are you concerned that the Border Patrol chief, former Border Patrol chief Rodney Scott, said that he was concerned about very, very minuscule data that they were receiving? So there's all this. We are told that illegal aliens are vetted against databases, but oftentimes they're doing biometrics as they come into this country, but not looking behind it in their home countries. Does that concern you when there's not a review done in the home country?
Well, we certainly need as much help as we can get from the countries of origin of these people. And when I say origin, not just where they come from originally, but countries they've come through. And the biometric enrollment piece is, of course, an important one. We have situations where even if...
Are we doing a thorough enough job of reviewing them, their actions and their lives in their home countries before they came here?
Well, I mean, we need more help from our foreign partners. There's no question about that. And I think that's an important part of it.
How about our domestic partners like the CIA and others that are supposed to protect us?
So there's been a lot of discussion, of course, over the last several years about the pivot to what's called the hard targets, right? The understandable focus, which I support, of focusing on the threat posed by China and Russia and Iran. But with that comes, if you look at, for example, the withdrawal from Afghanistan, we start to lose sources of information about foreign terrorist threats from overseas, and that is a concern to me.
Yeah, my time's running out. Has Vice President Harris met with you in regards to the border?
Well, I've been in meetings that have included the Vice President that have in different ways touched on border issues.
Has she specifically asked you for a meeting in regards to the threat that is at the border?
You know, I'm not going to get into sort of specific meetings, but I can tell you that I've been in meetings that have included, among other people, the Vice President that touch on border security issues.
Did she ask you questions about what you thought needed to be done in regards to reducing this threat to the American people?
You know, I really can't get into specific conversations.
Is support for President Trump a security concern within the FBI?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear it.
Is support for President Trump a security concern amongst your employees?
No.
Is objection to the COVID-19 vaccine a security threat?
Not from my perspective.
Who improved what is termed the Trump questionnaire within the FBI that was done by SIIS? Dina Perkins, Jeffrey Ventry were behind it. Who was responsible for that? And did you know that there was a Trump questionnaire out there?
So the document you're asking about is an interview outline that we only recently learned about, and in my view is completely inappropriate. I asked my team to get to the bottom of what happened and to ensure that doesn't happen again, and I've learned that it's not an FBI form, that its use was isolated, that it was created not by an FBI employee, but by an outside contractor, and that individual is no longer affiliated with the FBI. But we are sending what we have found to the Office of Inspector General, and we'll cooperate, of course, with anything they...
Mr. Chairman, I'll just close with this. We keep hearing about these isolated examples, whether it's Richmond Catholics, this instance. When isn't it a pattern I yield back.
Gentleman goes back, Mr. Correa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Director Ray, welcome again to this committee. And I want to thank you and your agents for good job you're doing to protect Americans. Earlier this week, I was part of the group that went out to visit Butler, Pennsylvania Homeland Security members. I agree with my colleagues that have said violence has no part in our democracy. And I trust you will investigate the events surrounding July 13th thoroughly. I'm going to ask you a question. Hope you keep it in mind as your investigation proceeds, which is, who's in charge? Who's in charge at a campaign rally, setting it up? Secret Service or a campaign? And I ask this question because when I was there, had a couple of law enforcement individuals alluding to that question as well. They gave me an example. They said, if a Secret Service says you need to set up a line of dump trucks behind the stage to serve, to protect the candidate, and the campaign says that's bad optics, who ends up winning the debate? So my question is, who's in charge? And as you investigate this crime scene, hope you ask the locally elected officials. I spoke to a county supervisor, local police and sheriff. They all had information they wanted us to know, to relay. We just didn't have the opportunity to sit down and talk to them. There was a lot of concern that they weren't given enough time to prepare for this rally. They thought there were things that could have been done better. And ultimately, what I keep thinking, what I keep coming back to is question, who's in charge at these rallies? I think it's an important one because we have an election right around the corner. Pennsylvania, Butler, these areas, battleground states around the country will continue to be areas where our candidates, both sides, will show up and the threats will continue to be there. So I hope, Director Ray, that you'll keep that statement in mind as you continue to investigate this crime scene.
Well, I appreciate the question. I will tell you that we've conducted well over 400 interviews, but we have many more still to conduct. And as is not unusual in an investigation, I'm sure there will be situations where we have to go back to people we've already interviewed with follow-up questions. And our interviews cover a wide range of people. I do think it's important to make sure that the committee and the American people understand the scope of our investigation versus the scope of others. Our investigation is focused on the shooter and his attack. There is, of course, and I understand completely why, there are two separate reviews, one by the DHS Inspector General and the other by this outside independent panel that's been announced, that are focused on the security posture, the adequacy of the security posture at the rally, Secret Service decision-making and actions and things like that. And so I certainly understand why there are all those questions. But those are in scope of those two other reviews. And of course, whatever, Congress chooses to do. Our investigation, though, because of our interviews of people who are on the scene, will relate to that in some ways. And we're going to share whatever we learn that's relevant with those other reviews.
Director A, my last minute that I have, I'm going to flip quickly to your good job resources. Earlier this year in the Appropriations Committee, you testified that you were, for 2024, your budget was $500 million below what you needed to sustain your 2023 efforts. A few minutes ago, you talked about foreign terrorists. The last few weeks, I know information has emerged. That information came from FISA information that was able to be collected overseas on these possible terrorist threats. What we have here today is a domestic terrorist, what looks to be a lone wolf. Your statements, there's nothing really there that would have tipped anybody off to this individual. Is that what I'm hearing from you?
Well, I don't know that I'd go quite that far because we're still investigating a lot related to the shooter. It does appear so far that we're seeing less in his...
My 6 seconds, I would just say, I would ask that you let us know what resources you need to protect the American public and our candidates in our democratic system.
I appreciate the question. I would just say this. We are in, as I've said consistently today and for quite some time now, we are in an elevated threat environment covering a wide range of threats. And the FBI is central to protecting the American people from those threats. And state and local law enforcement, who depend on us every day, rely on us for all sorts of services, databases, forensic support, training. I could go on and on and on. And a lot of those departments, unlike the FBI, have had a hard time recruiting. And so this is not a time to pull back on our funding because we're going to leave our brothers and sisters in state and local law enforcement twisting in the wind. And then by extension, the American people we're all collectively sworn to protect.
Thank you. And Mr. Chair, I yield.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Texas recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Director Wray, for being here. When did you last speak with President Biden?
I don't have the exact date, but it's been certainly since the since the shooting.
So you have spoken to the president since the assassination attempt on President Trump's life?
Yes, sir.
And what was the mental state of the president?
We had a perfectly professional conversation.
And are you? Do you have any scheduled briefings of the president upcoming?
Not at the moment, specifically scheduled. No.
In 2016 and 2015, top FBI officials infamously texted about, quote, their insurance policy to make sure Trump was never elected or inaugurated as president. Have any FBI agents texted, emailed, or expressed disappointment that Trump survived the assassination attempt or otherwise editorialized about the assassination attempt?
I don't know about any agents. There have been at least 2 instances, I think, or 1 instance of an individual who posted something that I consider outrageous and totally inappropriate and unacceptable. And that individual has been referred to our inspection division, which is the arm, our sort of internal affairs investigatory arm that does the disciplinary process.
Okay. Will you report back to this committee any other incidents?
I'll do my best to share information with the committee.
You testified earlier that the FBI maintains high standards irrespective of so-called diversity efforts. Is it true that in December of 2016, former Director Comey lowered the passing standards for phase 1, allowing an influx of previously unqualified applicants to continue in the hiring process who normally would have been stopped back in December of 2016?
Yeah, I can't speak to Director Comey's
what were the
changes. I can tell you that at least since I've been director, changes that we have made to.
Well, we're standing on a specific question. Were standards changed? Phase 1, this is a specific part of the process. Were they changed in 2016?
Well, I don't recall if they were changed in 2016. Obviously, I started, as your question presupposes, after that. What I can tell you is since that time, we have made changes to various phases of the process, but none of them, this is important, none of them lowered the standards. In fact, if anything, they actually increased.
Are you familiar with reporting that we have, and we've asked questions to you about this? I'm not sure the result of the questions that are more quote easily accommodate a large pool of available applicants. FBI special agent hiring standards have been relaxed and requirements measurably lowered. This, according to a group of former agents who have testified about this and written a report and submitted it to Congress. In addition, specifically, minority people with 20-year careers, one in particular, a minority who served for more than 20 years. Wrote in this report and submitted it to Congress saying that these standards were in fact lowered and that in fact, if you were hiring, you were moved off of hiring if you put quality above these kinds of DEI requirements. Do you reject this report? And do you have comments on this report?
I haven't read.
You're aware of the report.
I'm aware of the report. I know that I've read every detail of it, but I can tell you that the claim that we have lowered our standards to be less selective and less competitive is not accurate.
So do you believe these former agents are lying to Congress when they submit a report to Congress stipulating and suggesting otherwise? Or are you saying that they are lying?
I'm saying they're mistaken.
Okay, but they're affirmatively on the record. They're telling us and submitting a report to Congress saying that those facts are directly in contradicting what you're testifying here today. So I just want to be clear so we know we're saying that they are submitting evidence to our record to the contrary that you say is untruthful.
I encounter all the time when I travel around the country and have conversations with our agents, and one of the things I try to do is have meetings with some of the longer serving agents without executive management.
That's okay. My only question is,
and my point here's
the implication is it's untruthful. So I need to move on. I got 1 minute left. Are you familiar with the case of Paulette Harlow? She's a 75-year-old elderly woman from Massachusetts with a debilitating medical condition. She was prosecuted for violating the FACE Act and sentenced to 2 years in prison. She has to go to Texas in 2 weeks. She was praying at an abortion clinic in Washington, D.C. The FBI interrogated and investigated her. Do you think it is appropriate for a 75-year-old woman who is praying at a clinic in D.C. to be put in prison for 2 years for that activity? Just a simple question. Do you think that's appropriate?
I'm not familiar with the specific case.
You're not familiar with that case. It's been significantly in the headlines, but you don't know how to comment on that case, that it's appropriate for a 75-year-old woman to be put in prison for 2 years for praying at a clinic.
Again, since I'm not familiar with the case, I don't want to start weighing in because I don't know all the facts. But what I can tell you is that when it comes to FACE Act enforcement and abortion-related violent extremism, I think one of the things that gets lost, and I appreciate the opportunity to clarify it, is that really since the Dobbs decision, actually more of our abortion-related violent extremism investigations have focused on violence against pro-life facilities as opposed to the other way around. And we've had a number of investigations. We're using FACE Act resources and our JTTFs.
We're still waiting on responses on letters that we've sent indicating the data to the contrary. There's been significant amount of efforts in targeting of people who are pro-lifers who go to clinics, and that they've been prosecuted, like this case, a 75-year-old woman who is now going to jail in Texas for 2 years because she was praying at a clinic in Washington, D.C. And we've submitted questions on that, and I'd appreciate a response on it. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentlelady from Pennsylvania is recognized.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Director Wray, for being here and for the work that your team does, as well as for sharing the information that you've been able to today. You just got a couple questions about that seem to imply that there was some problem with the FBI's diversity efforts, and certainly the 1950s version of the FBI was singularly Caucasian male agents, et cetera. Is the FBI a better force for having a diverse range of employees and agents?
I think diversity makes us better, but like everything else, it has to be done the right way. Mm-hmm. I think we can have a more diverse workforce and do it without lowering our standards, and that's, in my view, what we've done.
And you haven't lowered standards at the FBI?
We have not. I repeatedly come across people who are confused about different parts of that, and I appreciate the opportunity to set that straight.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we're all concerned here as we've seen the rollout of this Project 2025 that purports to try to eliminate any reference to diversity efforts across the entire federal government. So it is sort of a top of mind concern as it's threatening to become reality. So what I did want to talk about today is something some of my colleagues have mentioned, which is the normalization of threats and violence against public servants at all levels, whether it's election workers or school officials, elected officials and their families, judges, federal law enforcement agents, and others. To be clear, I think it's very clear that the majority of Americans wholeheartedly condemn any sort of political violence and understand that it's not legitimate discourse and that it has no place in our civic life. But words do matter, and they have consequences, particularly when uttered by people in positions of leadership. So that's why I remain very concerned by the willingness of some members of Congress to repeat disinformation and conspiracy theories that undermine trust in our public institutions, which serve all Americans. And when elected officials embrace overheated or fact-free rhetoric, it becomes dangerous. I have been heartened, as many national leaders have unequivocally condemned calls to violence, and I would urge all members of this body to do so and continue to do so, regardless of the party affiliation of the perpetrators or the targets of such threats. You and our other national security officials have repeatedly warned us that foreign actors are actively working to spread disinformation, to influence our elections and discredit our public institutions, and we shouldn't be aiding and abetting them. So to live in a country that we aspire to, where our most valued democratic processes like free and fair elections can be carried out unimpeded, and people can run for office, serve their communities, and exercise their right to vote without fear of violence. We've had some concerns about violence around our elections. In 2020, the endorsement and promulgation of falsehoods about the election results by the former president and his campaign led to threats and attacks against election officials and poll workers in Pennsylvania. And those falsehoods also wasted millions of taxpayer dollars on frivolous lawsuits and extraordinary security costs. So as we're again approaching November, we want to ensure that those who implement and defend our elections, our neighbors and our nonpartisan civil servants, can do that important work free from conspiracy theories and threats. So we know our local law enforcement across Pennsylvania are preparing for some disruption and threats because while Pennsylvania may be a battleground state in the upcoming election, that battle should obviously be a war of words over policy and the vision we're charting for our country's future, not an actual civil war. So how is the FBI working with state and local law enforcement to prevent and respond to election-related violence, particularly against election workers?
So in a variety of ways, we're partnering with state and local law enforcement. Obviously, the physical security in the first instance, in most of the respects you're talking about, is in the ordinary course, the responsibility of state and local law enforcement. But we play an important role in a number of ways. So we share, threat bulletins, information like that about things to be on the lookout for, things we're seeing. If we ever have specific threat information, then we work to get it to the right people. We have election crime coordinators, which we've had for decades in all 56 field offices who have existing relationship with not just state and local law enforcement, but election officials, especially focus on security and threat-related issues. And then, of course, we're participating in the election threats task force that DOJ set up, which is focused on threats of violence or actual violence against election workers specifically. And we've had a number of arrests and even some convictions already on that.
Thank you for your input. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back, Director. It's my intention to go approximately another half an hour. Then we'll break for the Prime Minister of Israel's address to the Congress on the floor, give you a chance for lunch, and then resume after that. But we'll keep pushing through for the next half hour if we can. The gentlelady from Indiana is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. I think you have a little bit better tone in conversation, so I appreciate it, and answer some questions, so I appreciate it. Hopefully you'll answer also on 2 letters that I sent you over a year ago, one related to Durham report and the other one related to Russian infiltrated SBU that collaborated with FBI. So hopefully we'll get these answers and hopefully we'll start doing authorization. Don't you think doing authorization would help us to get better answers? Congress should be probably working on authorizing new agency. Don't you agree with that?
We work very hard to try to get information to this committee and to other committees.
But authorizing spending probably would be a good thing for us to do. Don't you agree?
Oh, I'm sorry, authorizing what?
Our spending, not just doing appropriating, but actually doing authorization of spending through this committee.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. We might start doing that. But we can talk about, and a lot of my colleagues on other side, AR-15 gets a lot of bad rap, like to bring it up, this issue. But really, there are a lot of hunting rifles that probably, maybe even more accurate than a lot of ARs. And don't you agree? We have like millions, right? Don't you agree? We have millions of rifles owned by law-abiding Americans. So do you think we should be taking them? Millions of rifles from law-abiding Americans? What do you think about that? Would that be something feasible and really we should be doing that?
Well, again, I'm not going to be addressing anybody's specific legislative proposal. From our perspective, from the FBI's perspective, the concern is any dangerous weapon in the wrong hands.
But all weapons
in the
are
hands
dangerous.
of the wrong person.
But all weapons are dangerous, right?
I'm sorry?
All weapons are dangerous. Knives are dangerous,
Sure.
Explosive are dangerous. There are a lot of
weapons are by their very
but are we going to be
definition
confiscating, hunting rifles and rifles for millions of Americans? Do you think it's even feasible to do something like that from law-abiding citizens?
It's not something I'm advocating.
Okay, well, thank you. I appreciate that. So we have to go back. That was a catastrophic failure of security. That what's happened, recently with attempted assassination. Don't you agree with that?
Well, I think former Director Cheadle has already publicly acknowledged that it was, I think her words were, a significant operational failure.
Then we had, similar situation, a different, talking about bad optics. So Speaker Pelosi at that time didn't want to have bad optics on January 6th, and we didn't have proper security here on January 6th. That was a catastrophic failure too. Are we looking at that? Any one conclusion was made from that? Have we made any adjustments? Because I know a lot of people, got hurt now just being here. It was a lot of cases bringing up the Department of Justice, and a lot of them were really just law-abiding Americans that really just upset with the government, and they have a reason to do it. So I think we need to think about it before we prosecute, or instead of actually, looking how we can deal with real criminals and how we can have a proper security when we have events with so many people there. So did you have confidential human sources? I think you never answered that question on January 6th in the Capitol. Did you have some?
I'm sorry, what's the question?
Confidential human sources. Did you have them on January 6th in the Capitol?
Well, again, I'm never going to be getting into when and where we have or have not used confidential human sources. But
are you willing to send the record that you had no confidential human sources that went into Capitol on January 6th?
As I've said consistently, I'm not going to get into where we have or have not used confidential human sources. I can tell you that if you are asking if the violence at the Capitol on January 6th was part of some operation orchestrated by FBI sources or agents, the answer is no.
No, I didn't ask you that. I asked, so did you investigate any confidential human sources? Did you do any investigation and looking at that? So you're not answering if you had any or not. So if you had potentially, did you do anything you needed to make sure to investigate that none of your sources did anything wrong? If they did wrong, they were prosecuted the same way, like you're trying to prosecute a lot of people that really, even in Supreme Court rule recently, that some unconstitutional charges.
Let me just add that there have now been, I think, 180 individuals who've gone to trial, in addition to the 850 who've pled guilty.
Right, but I think the problem is you put these charges, a lot of people would plead guilty. But let me say just quickly, because I only have 10 seconds, really. So I hope you will take seriously what you're doing. Related to the border security is also a crisis. Your vice president was a lead-in on that. Has she initiated meetings with you to lead, like weekly or monthly meeting where she actually get briefings from you as a lead-in border czar that had that function? Have you had that? Has she initiated any meetings on a regular basis with you?
Again,
gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman can respond.
Right. I on this issue of confidential human sources, number one, I will say there is a DOJ OIG review that's underway that I think addresses some of these kinds of topics, I believe, but I won't speak for the Inspector General. Second, as to this suggestion, which I've heard all too many times, that somehow January 6th was orchestrated by FBI agents or sources, I will note that in addition to my prior comments, that there have now been 850-ish individuals who've pled guilty, another 180 who've gone to trial. They've all had access to defense counsel, discovery, all the things the Constitution and the rules provide them. It's been in front of something like 15 different judges, I think dozens of juries, and not one has given credence to this notion. And in fact, I don't think any of them have even really seriously tried to raise it. So it's not just my word for it. Look what's happening in the cases. Thank you.
The gentleman from Colorado is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Director Wray, for being here, for your testimony today, for the work that you do each and every day, and that your frontline agents across the country do each and every day to protect Americans, to keep our country safe. Also grateful for the work that you're doing in investigating the horrific events of July 13th and the attempted assassination of former President Trump, which everyone must and has condemned. I would first just ask, do you believe that the FBI has the adequate resources to ultimately ensure that your agency gets to the bottom of it and fully investigates this terrible crime?
Well, we are devoting massive amounts of resources to this specific investigation. We have easily several hundred FBI agents, analysts, and professional staff working on it. It involves over half of the FBI's 56 field offices, almost every headquarters division. We even have some of our overseas offices working on it. You might say, well, why is that? Well, because some of the companies that involve accounts or purchases or communications or what have you that the shooter used are foreign companies, so we have to get evidence from overseas from those companies. I've talked about our lab a little bit earlier today. We've got our Office of Technology Division working on the digital devices. We have our Behavioral Analysis Unit, our BAU, working on helping us build out a profile of the shooter. I could go on and on and on. So it's all hands on deck on this case, as I think is appropriate. Now, when you ask about our resources, I've been public about the fact that the fiscal year 24 budget put us $500 million below where we needed to be to sustain current operations. And on FY25, the current House mark would put us significantly further back behind that and would result in significant risks across every program and our support to state and local law enforcement. We arrested something like 50 violent criminals per day, every day last year. The current mark would mean more violent criminals on the street, more neighborhoods at risk. We have about a 1,300% increase in our investigations related to China and its targeting of us. And I can assure you, China's not cutting its budget. This would mean more threats from China. We have something like 300 to 400 investigations just into cartel leadership. And about hardly a week goes by when some FBI field office isn't seizing enough fentanyl to wipe out an entire state. Those cuts means more fentanyl on the street, more people dying. So the people who suffer the most are state and local law enforcement and the American people we're sworn to protect. And so
let me
look
just
forward to working with Congress, but we really need to be smart about what we're doing. And I think that would be a step in the wrong direction given the threat environment that we face.
And I couldn't agree with you more, Director Wray. And of course, we've talked about this during previous hearings in which you've testified. And to be clear, that I think the budget that House Republicans have proposed, which is about a $325 million cut to the FBI, would do precisely what you've described and have deleterious impacts for public safety across our country. And House Democrats are certainly working to prevent those cuts from taking place. You've talked at great length about the events of July 13. There's justifiably a lot of public interest in the investigation, which we understand is ongoing. Wonder if there's anything that you'd like to disclose or provide to the committee or to the public that perhaps has not yet been gleaned during the course of this hearing, and just give you an opportunity, because there's a lot of folks related to the investigation.
One thing I can give an update on, which is pretty fresh here. We had some conversations with some of the members about the access to the roof and the ladder and so forth. And our evidence response teams and their forensic collection, we now believe that the subject climbed onto the roof using some mechanical equipment on the ground and vertical piping on the side of the AGR building. In other words, we do not believe he used a ladder to get up there.
One question, if the chairman might indulge me with just a few extra seconds. There's an article recently regarding several former Trump administration national security officials who had received a duty to warn briefing from the FBI regarding the potential threat from Iran. And I think there is this article made clear deep concern that these individuals have, justifiably so, about the threat level, and particularly given the events of the last several months, and the need for there to be an increased security posture and security personnel for former officials who may very well still be at risk. And I don't know if you're familiar with that article. I'm trying not to use names here, but I think would perhaps follow up with your agency and with the Department of Justice more broadly to ensure that any individuals who are potentially facing a threat from Iran or another hostile actor in a foreign nation have the resources they need to have the security available to them.
So again, without reference to any specific individual, I want to be very clear about this because I've tried to be vocal on this, but it sometimes doesn't get noticed as much, which is that in my view, the Iranian government has been extremely aggressive and brazen. We have seen in the last few years an attempt, I'm speaking just from public information, an attempt to assassinate a former U.S. National Security Advisor on U.S. soil. We have seen an attempt first to kidnap and then to try to murder an American dissident / journalist who was a critic of the Iranian regime right smack in the middle of New York City. We have seen a cyber attack against a children's hospital in New England that ties back to Iran. We have seen, as I've testified before, as Director Ratcliffe and I announced, an effort by the Iranians to target the 2020 presidential election. And that's all before you even get to the fact that the Iranian government is the leading state sponsor of terrorism. So if that's not enough to convince people that Iran is a threat, I don't know what is.
But Director, was there a distinction between what the gentleman from Colorado raised and what you just said, this general concern in these specific incidents you talk about, and a direct specific threat on President Trump that's distinct from what you've been describing as this general concern with Iran?
Well, again, I can't get into specific pieces of class.
And if so, when? If it was a distinct threat on President Trump, when did that take place?
Yeah, all I can tell you, certainly in this kind of setting, is targeting of U.S. officials for the Soleimani strike is something that is a reality that the Iranian government has at times called for very publicly. And whenever there is reporting, let me try to answer your question this way. Whenever there is reporting about any of those protectees, we share the information in a variety of ways, working with the intelligence community, working with whoever is the protective service with responsibility for that individual, and we do it in a timely way using the duty to warn process that was just referred to. And to my knowledge, everything along those lines that's relevant was shared in a timely way with the relevant people.
Thank you. The gentleman from Wisconsin is recognized.
Director Ray, thanks for being here. Where were you when you heard that President Trump was shot? And then what were like your immediate actions, response to that as director?
I was about to have dinner with family, and I was horrified and angry.
I'm just thinking, the reason I asked the question is because I'm still trying to figure out kind of lanes, what the FBI would respond to and what the Secret Service has the responsibility to respond to. Can you just kind of cover that again?
Sure. So the FBI is not responsible for, has never really been part of our mandate or mission for the physical security of venues, of specific protectees or anything like that. That's if it's somebody within Secret Service's scope, that's their mandate and mission. We are a law enforcement and intelligence agency, and so if you think about it this way, we're the Federal Bureau of Investigation. We're not the Federal Bureau of Security. You might say, well, what's the difference? Well, there is a difference. We investigate crimes. We investigate threats to national security, but we don't. Questions about security posture, the adequacy of resources and assets that were deployed to protect a specific individual, whether there's enough security, and certainly the staffing of that security is not something the FBI, again, we're 116 years old, has historically done.
So at this point, have you been able to go through the shooter's home and kind of document kind of what you found as far as evidence goes?
So we have been able to search the shooter's home. So again, just sort of tying your first question to your second question now, our role is to conduct an investigation of the shooter and the attack. And so we're going to conduct a painstaking, intense investigation of that. We have, among other scenes that we've processed using evidence response teams, in addition to the rally scene itself, of course, we have been through the shooter's home, his bedroom, other parts of the house, et cetera.
Have you been able to establish that he did go to a range and either zero that weapon in or, at least target shoot that weapon prior to the assassination attempt?
So we do assess that he went to a shooting range the day before. Not the only time he went to a shooting range. He was a fairly avid, might be a little strong, but a fairly avid, shooting hobbyist. And so he went to, belonged to different sort of clubs and went to certain ranges and that kind of thing. We do believe, based on what we've seen so far, that he went to a shooting range the day before and that he shot an AR style rifle at that range the day before. I'm not sure we know for sure that it's the weapon that he used, but I think we assess that it probably is.
Have you been able to interview his parents?
Yes, we have.
And was there anything that was gained from that interview that would lead you to believe that they certainly were aware of what was going on?
I guess I want to be careful about talking about specific people's interviews, but I would say that his parents were cooperative with us. And as I've said before, and hopefully this gets at your question, we have not identified any accomplices, co-conspirators, or anything along those lines.
So it's the FBI's position right now that he still acted independently.
Again, we're still, I know it seems like a lifetime since July 13th, but we're still early stages. But we have not seen anything so far that would suggest to us that he acted with others.
How does the FBI view not just a Trump rally, but political rallies versus other types of events, from a security perspective, compared to a college football game or any mass, large crowd type gathering? Because I think one of the things that's most difficult to really to swallow at this point is that the idea that these Trump rallies have been happening for years and that there could be such a lax approach to the physical security of those fairgrounds that day. And I'm wondering, where does this fall? And then on top of that there were other presidential candidates out there that didn't have full Secret Service protection. RFK Jr. has been the most vocal about it. I was wondering if you could comment on the facilities as well as providing security for presidential candidates.
Well, again, I want to be a little bit careful to stay in my lane because, again, security posture and the adequacy of the security posture is really the core expertise and responsibility of agencies like the Secret Service. But certainly it is, I think, fair to say that outdoor events, whether they're political rallies or, as you say, a college football game in an open stadium, a concert, these are places that are often, particularly challenging to secure adequately because the range of threats that can face them are higher. In addition to that, has been discussed a little bit here already in today's hearing, just threats to public officials, including politicians, is an increasingly pervasive part of today's landscape. And so that adds to the challenge. So you're talking about the combination of individuals who are increasingly targeted for violence, combined with venues that are softer and harder to secure targets, I guess is the way I would answer. But again, those kinds of questions, the adequacy of the security posture, all the resources that were or were not devoted, all that stuff, is my understanding, would be very much in scope for the DHS Inspector General investigation and this outside independent panel that's been appointed.
I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Director, I think we're going to be able to get two more members' times a question, then we have to get to the floor for the Prime Minister. Gentlelady from Georgia is recognized.
Thank you, Chair Johnson, and thank you so much, Director Wray, for your transparency and your testimony today. First, I want to say my friend, my mentor, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, was known by many as the voice of reason here in Congress, and she was my friend before I even came to Congress. And in my freshman year, she kind of took me under her wing and she kind of showed me the ropes. And she was a force to be reckoned with. And I can say that she will never, ever be replaced. And she was a trailblazer, and I know that she will sorely be missed here in Congress. Director Wray, I only have one question for you today, but before we get to that point, I'd just like to reiterate today that political violence is never acceptable. Regardless of how different our political values and views are, attempted assassinations are a stain to the very democratic ideals of this nation. We have endured riots on Capitol Hill on January 6th, where a literal noose was erected on Capitol grounds, intended for then Vice President Pence and Speaker Emeritus Nancy Pelosi. Political violence against election workers, that has been expressed today. An attack on Paul Pelosi, Nancy Pelosi's husband. Threats against the FBI agents, as you have expressed, and prosecutors, and threats to the staff who serve the public every single day. Congressman Connolly's staff was targeted and attacked last year. And now we have the attempted assassination of a former president of the United States. All of this within just the last 3 years. This violence simply needs to end. The assassination attempt on Donald Trump was, by the grace of God, a failure. The weapon the 20-year-old man was able to obtain, an AR-15, generally has a shooting range up to 600 yards and shot Mr. Trump from almost 150 yards away. This weapon has the ability to kill multiple people in seconds. And sadly, Corey Compouture lost his life because of this man and because of this gun. Mr. Compouture's family will never be the same. Trust me, I understand that more than anyone else in this room. Is the near loss of a former president enough for this Congress to finally take action? Because there are 206 of us that are already standing in the wings, ready to take immediate action to ban assault weapons today. We need only 12 more of our colleagues to join us in courage and move the legislation to save lives of so many of the people that we are elected to serve by removing assault weapons from the hands of people who simply should not have them in their possession. We are crippling our democracy and we are ripping apart our fellow Americans until we do. I ask today, because it is clearly it wasn't enough to take action when the lethality of assault weapons, we lost 26 and 7-year-olds and 6 teachers in 2012 when I also lost my son to gun violence, or 14 teenagers and 3 more teachers in 2018, nor was it enough when we lost 19 more children and 2 more teachers in 2022. Well, is it enough now? Now that a former president, the very president that many of you in this room are hoping will be reelected, almost lost his life because this Congress has failed to reinstate an assault weapons ban. A ban that, by the way, Republicans joined with Democrats the past 30 years ago. Well, fine. If y'all don't like assault weapons ban, we can bring another bill that I have introduced to a vote, the Go Safe Act. This bill focuses on the components of the semi-automatic firearms and regulates their infrastructure, sale, and transfer. This, again, is not the time for thoughts and prayers. This is a time for action. Director Wray, just one question I have for you. Would you rather have your officers protected or protect someone against an assault weapon being shot from 147 yards away, or a standard pistol with no accessories attached?
Well, again, I'm going to refrain from appearing to comment on specific legislative proposals, but I can tell you that we have certainly concerned about the danger to law enforcement from any kind of high-powered weapon in the wrong hands. And it hits close to home for us because just not that long ago, 2 great agents, Laura Schwarzenberger and Dan Alphen, down in Miami, executing a search in a crimes against children case, were shot and killed by a subject with an automatic weapon. So again, dangerous weapons in the wrong hands is something that, of course, from a law enforcement perspective concerns us. But I'm not going to wade into the legislative process.
Well, thank you for that answer. I'd rather give our agents a fighting chance. And I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Gentleman from Oregon is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Director Ray, for being here today. So we spend $3 billion a year, excuse me, on the Secret Service, $3 billion. And it would seem that we could and should have had a better job done a few weeks ago on the 13th than what we saw. Will you have anything to say about correcting what are the obvious deficiencies in what the Secret Service did?
Well, for the most part, the deficiencies or adequacy or inadequacy of Secret Service's performance, decision-making, resources, all that stuff is in the purview of those two other investigations. That is the DHS Inspector General and the outside independent panel that's been announced. Having said that, our investigation, which, as I've testified now, involves several hundred FBI employees and every asset we can bring to bear of the shooter. Again, our investigations of the shooter and his attack, of course, involves interviewing law enforcement, including lots and lots and lots of Secret Service people. So we'll share all that with those reviews so that they can answer those questions.
The reason I'm asking this is because this isn't the first time the Secret Service has been before Congress. There was a 435-page report issued in 2015 by Congress saying, fix yourself. They didn't. In fact, there was a follow-up in 2019 where they had only done a few of the, I think it was 18 or 19 different specific things they were supposed to do. They'd done some, but certainly not all. There was another follow-up in 2022. And again, the Secret Service had not done what Congress had asked. I guess my question to you, Mr. Director, is what should Congress do? A 435-page report 9 years ago, and still the Secret Service didn't do what it was told to do then. Can you help, Director Ray? Because this type of performance is not acceptable.
Well, as I think former Director Chula, significant operational failure. If there are ways for the FBI to be helpful beyond what we're already doing in terms of our investigation, we stand ready to try to be helpful. I do want to say, as somebody who's been in law enforcement for most of my career, I've worked with some just phenomenal Secret Service agents. Going all the way back to my time as a line prosecutor, and they have an incredibly hard job, and I have a lot of affection and respect for the men and women of the Secret Service.
I'm sure you do, and I'm sure you're right. But the trouble is when Congress says you need to do these 19 things and they don't, something needs to change. Now, the director has resigned, but you're going to be in a position, because your agency is doing such a careful review, to say a lot about what should have been done. I guess the real issue is much more of what the higher-ups in that agency are or are not doing. Perhaps that's on us.
And we will share with those reviews anything that we come across that could be helpful or relevant to them for those questions.
Let me quickly go to some details on the actual events. It appeared to a lot of us as the Secret Service was taking former President Trump from the stage that he was clearly still in view of everybody. And had there been another shooter, I didn't see him being protected. Are you going to raise that issue?
I think that's really more in scope of these two other reviews.
Let me go
both of them.
Okay, that's fine. Let me go to the shooter as he was on top of the roof. Apparently another officer from another police division saw him and quickly ducked down because the shooter aimed a gun at him. And then the shooter apparently, was he prone at the time he took the shot toward the president?
So my understanding is that the local officer who we're talking about, the assistance of another local officer, was able to kind of get up and see onto the roof where he observed the shooter, I believe, in a prone shooting position. The shooter then turned and faced him, the local officer, with the weapon.
From the prone position.
That's my understanding.
And then he went back to the prone position.
And this is all seconds before the shooter took his.
But that entire time, the shooter was in the scope sight of the counter sniper, correct?
That one I'd have to double check on. I know we've interviewed the counter sniper, but I'm not sure I know the answer.
The counter sniper didn't take a shot until after the assassin attempted to shoot the former president and others. You got off 8 shots before the counter sniper shot the shooter. What's with that protocol? Can you get that fixed?
Well, I really want to be careful not to be, given the scope of our investigation, somehow second guessing the very difficult act and decision it takes for a counter sniper to kill another human being in that situation. It's all happening in seconds. So
8 shots.
Yeah.
And that was after he'd been seen for 20 minutes. I yield back. Thank you.
Director, that's an important question though, because you've talked to the counter sniper. And that, I mentioned this in our opening statement, that critical 5 minutes from 6:09 to 6:14 and what takes place there is critical. And I think that's what the gentleman was getting at. And we were hopeful that you could tell us something about your interview with the counter sniper.
Yeah, I guess I want to distinguish a couple things. There is some individual, not law enforcement, I believe, who spotted the shooter on the roof a few minutes before. But I think law enforcement spotting him with the weapon on the roof is seconds before the shot.
Okay,
so
that's important.
Yeah, so I think there's two different things.
I think what you're saying is it wasn't maybe that if the bad guy shoots at 6:11, then you're saying this encounter with local law enforcement that Mr. Bentz was just getting into happened just seconds before that and maybe not 2 minutes before that?
That's my understanding. That, in other words, that there's different things here. There's an individual, at least one individual, I can remember, of the public, who observed him on the roof. Not clear whether or not the individual saw a weapon or not, but saw him in a way that was concerning. That is some number of, not many, but like just a handful of minutes. I think separate from that, as far as law enforcement goes, in terms of a weapon, this local officer that we just talked about observed the individual, again, literally just seconds before the shooter took his shots. Separate and apart from all of that, roughly, I think, maybe a little less than or around an hour before the shooting, there were local law enforcement officers who observed the shooter, not up on the roof, not with a weapon, but with I believe, a rangefinder, kind of like you would use if you were playing golf or something, in a way that was odd and suspicious. So that started happening with local law enforcement beforehand. But in terms of shooter, meaning with the weapon, law enforcement, my understanding is that the first time that happened was this local officer climbing up on the roof seconds before.
Again, we want that timeline. I think the committee wants that timeline and communications that were taking place in that short period of time.
Again, as I've said with everything else, I really want to be careful. I'm leaning in, trying to share as much as I can here. Facts are evolving, things may change, but we are working on a timeline, among other things.
Committee will stand in recess until after the Prime Minister's remarks conclude.
Sådär ja, amazing. Då så vännerna. Fantastiskt att lyssna på alltihopa detta och det avslutas ju lite snyggt här tycker jag. Vi har en liten bild längst till vänster jumbotronen som kan vara lite kul faktiskt på riktigt. Det är nu när Jim Jordan pratar med Ray här, det sista, och spänner ögonen i han. Jag lyckades fånga momentet helt enkelt. Jag hoppas att ni får lite intressant information utav den. Vi började idag med en riktig svensk eller svenskättlingen alltså andra rundan är det ju nu. Det här är ju inte ett sätt som man gör det på här hemma i Svedala eller i Falukorvien eller i Mordor eller vad ni nu vill kalla, utan i Mordor så kommer det ut en liten snutt på 20 sekunder till allmänheten och så kommer det då en Stockholmsbyråkratisk man tillåter oss helt enkelt inte att se det här då. Om det skulle vara något liknande. Man håller ingenting sånt här heller. Man gör inte det. Man ifrågasätter inte. Man talar inte. Man sätter inte någon form av myndigheter till test på något som helst sätt. Och skulle man göra det så hamnar de då vad fan heter den nu? Nu tappar jag namnet. Konstitutionsutskottet, och där kan man få en prick. Man får en prick och så kan media skriva om att man har fått en prick. Men vad den här pricken innebär, den är lika okänd, prickens innebörd, som vad de 500 tonnen guld tog vägen. Så kan man säga. Den där lilla perioden där under tidigt 1920-tal när svenska ättlingeledning släppade tillbaka lite på det. Kommer på tal mick. Vi ska försöka följa Elon in i kongressalen, så vi hinner väl prata lite grann innan dess, hoppas jag. Och sen är det dags för oss att bege oss in till Netanyahus besök. Och han har redan varit hos, tror jag i alla fall, han var och hälsade på Trump också. Kanske de tog ett par driver och snackade lite. Och den största nyheten idag är ju nu att Zelensky ber Kina att anordna fredsförhandlingar. Vilket inte var helt oväntat, men det är ju ändå trevligt. Det verkar som saker och ting går åt rätt håll. Så var inte blyga, utan passa på att utnyttja de här minuterna innan det drar igång med nästa episka event, skulle jag vilja säga. Eller episkt, det är inte så jävla episkt, men Netanyahu då, som ivrigt påstår att den djupa staten är det som styr Israel. Av många både randiga och rutiga skäl som vi inte ens vet om, så har han ju ändå sagt detta gång efter gång. Han kanske har någonting på gång. Kanske Zelensky har någonting på gång också. Kanske Zelensky inte är vad man tror att han är. Inte vet jag. Men jag har en liten känsla av det i alla fall. Att det kanske skulle kunna vara så. Men det är som sagt var, det är obekräftat, det är ren spekulation, och då är vi tydliga med det när det är spekulation. Men det kan åtminstone vara tänkvärt. Jag hoppas att ljudet har varit bra. Jag hade gärna velat få lite konfirmation på det. Det här är inte lätt. Det är en massa jävla grejer att hålla reda på, rent ut sagt. Men jag tror det funkar. Oh, Brian, welcome. Is the sound okay? Thumbs up, thumbs down? Yeah, Anders, thank you. Carol, thank you. Krusslappen, does it sound okay? Ja, tack Joakim. Tack Carol, tack allihopa. Ja, men det är bra. Då funkar ju det i alla fall. Det är ju omöjligt att veta. Jag har ju detta i lurarna eller i dubbla. Det är hur som helst.
Det låter kanonbra, Mått. Jättebra ljud.
Ja, jävlar. Tack, jag måste vrida upp. Vänta. Förlåt. Nu ska vi se. Ja, Tony, nu har jag dig där. Nu ska jag bara se. Jag ska vrida ner live. Ska vi se. Du kan säga 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, Tony.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 11, 12.
Jajamän. 11, 12, 17,4. Nej, men det funkar väl.
Ja, jag ska bara lägga till någonting där med Zelensky. Alltså jag tittade på myset med Carl för ett tag sedan. Och de är inne på exakt samma sak där med Zelensky. Det är någonting som har hänt nu när Biden har hoppat av det presidentskapet, skulle jag tro. Ja.
Självklart. Så är det. Jag la ut en fotboll. 2022, samma dag de drog igång, så la jag ut. Jag bytte ut Zelensky, eller Putin mot Zelensky, med den här fotbollsbilden på mitt gamla, inte Twitter-account då, utan på mitt gamla Facebook-account. Och så skrev jag, det här bör vi ha med oss i bakfickan, eller det här bör vi tänka på då, så att säga. Så jag har mina aningar om hur det där spelas ut, och tror det eller ej att jag har lite samma aning om Netanyahu också faktiskt. Det är ju ett spel vi ser framför oss här nu med oligarker och suboligarker, både högt och lågt då. vilket för oss vanliga dödliga är omöjligt att förstå. Men vi kan ändå ha våra aningar då så att säga. Icke desto mindre så lär vi ju få våran skeppa full här i Falukorven. Det är inte mer med det. Det är bara frågan om att man då har så pass mycket kritiskt tänkande eller lateralt tänkande att man inte går på det där känslostyrda bullshitten som vi blir överösta hela tiden och litar på våra myndigheter och deras förträfflighet. Det är väl kanske det sista man skulle göra egentligen om jag får säga någonting. Det kan man ju bara lägga ner. Det är människor som jobbar på de här myndigheterna och då är det frågan om varför jobbar de där? Vad är det de gör egentligen? Och det innebär ju inte att alla är onda på något som helst sätt eller vis. Men det är organiserat på ett visst sätt enligt en viss princip. Och har man inte det klart för sig så är det nog rätt så lätt att man kan säga så här, man väljer antingen så litar man på myndigheterna och tycker att det är jättebra och bankerna och det som styr myndigheterna. Eller så väljer man att inte göra det. Man kan inte cherrypicka beroende på hur ens känslostyrda bullshit-hjärna fungerar då. Det är väl det är ett base case. Och som sagt var att det är väldigt gott råd så att säga.
Jag har en känsla av att det är en ring i en ring där också. Alltså, det är precis som du säger, Mott. Att det är inte bara onda människor, det är goda människor också. Jag liksom får för mig att det utförs ett krig där med, ska jag tro.
Ja, det är alltså ett lokalderby inne på de här myndigheterna i militären och i polisen och så vidare just nu. Det är inte konstigare än så. Säkerhetspolisen säkert också, men kanske inte så mycket där. Jag tror de har bilden rätt klart för sig. Men oavsett, och det kan vi inte veta helt enkelt, utan det är ju ner på personal level och de människorna kommer ju inte prata om det för efteråt. Det kommer nog skrivas en och annan memoar om de här åren.
Ja,
det är jag säker på.
Definitivt, men jag är helt på det klara med att varför skulle vi vara så långt ifrån det som händer i USA? Vi är jävligt nära det som händer i USA.
Ja, vi är ihoplimmade på höften så att det är ju inte mer ja, som sagt var, det kommer skrivas en och annan memoar och en och annan sång också. Det skrivs redan sånger. Tack så mycket Desperado. Vi är där vi är liksom och vi måste göra det vi måste göra då. Och det är inte att jag gör det här, alltså bara så här rent personligt, det är för att vi ska bättra på oss helt enkelt, att vi ska bli mer medvetna om vår omgivning helt enkelt och ta den grejen vidare och smitta av den till andra då. Det är det enda sättet framåt. Det är inte det red pill eller det blue pill. Egentligen så är det det purple pill som är någonstans mellan rött och blått. Ja. Faktiskt i landet Falukorven. Kunskap med andra ord. Ja. Vi har ju, just idag har vi ju ingen.
Jag vill uppmana alla lyssnare att detektera folk som inte tillhör oss. Alltså de som inte tillhör oss, de vill inte rädda oss. Utan de som vill rädda oss, det är de som tillhör oss. Och kan vi detektera de människorna, då kommer det här att gå jättebra. Jag är helt övertygad om det.
Ja, så är det ju. De som är upphängda helt i det här systemet, de kommer ju klösa på insidan av muren runt Mordor, a.k.a. Stockholm. Så är det bara. Alltså inte fysiskt då, det är ingen som kommer bygga någon mur där, men den mentala muren där då, den är vad den är då. Helt enkelt. Så att,
plocka ut de som tillhör skådespelet. Det är det viktigaste. Plocka ut de som tillhör skådespelet. Och sen kan det gå till alla tjänstemän och allting. De är säkert inte på det stadiet. De är säkert på vårat stadie. De är säkert på det goda stadiet. Jag tror det.
Ja, jag skulle vilja säga att hälften av de där 2500 på kansliet jag skulle vilja säga att det är 50-50 där nu. Fikarasterna på det kansliet måste ju vara de mest, där är stämningen nog något tryckt just nu, så kan man nog säga.
Ja, lätt.
Lätt, eller hur? De hade behövt en glad Bombadils som springer omkring där och kastar blommor på dem. Det tror jag. Och kanske prata lite med dem. Jag vet inte. Så de kan fråga.
Men-
De är säkert att lyssna, så det spelar ingen roll.
Men vad är det för någonting som Elon ska in på som vi ska lyssna på nu, Mått?
Netanyahu är på besök.
Ja.
Jajamän. Och för er vetskap då så kämpar jag ju på här med att försöka dela de här olika kongresspersonerna och sådär. För det finns ju en möjlighet då att kunna så att säga orientera sig bland de här människorna. Det är nog faktiskt lite medvetet för att det är ju rätt många här. Det är ett stort land. De är faktiskt inte så många fler än vad vi har här i ett land som är lika stort som en av deras större städer bara. Men ja. Jag ska se om vi får upp den livestreamen här nu. Har jag lite tur så lyckas jag med den manövern. Så, för det är spännande och det är ju lite breaking news då när Elon plötsligt dök upp i kongressen. Av någon anledning då. Så den som påstår att det inte händer grejer, den är inte... Ja. Så jag ska försöka att... se om vi får en bra live-länk och kunna koppla upp, vem vet. Vi ska se. Fox var... APA. De har precis kört igång. Se om jag fixar det. Det är väldigt stråligt där just nu så jag ska fixa ljudet. Det är väldigt stråligt där just nu.
I'm afraid there's something wrong with your mic, Mark.
Go ahead, Brian.
Oh, okay. I wanted to ask you a question, sir. The I've been meaning to ask this. I don't know exactly how to ask it, but you refer to those that were captured by their captors. You called it Stockholm syndrome, right?
Yeah.
What do you call it? Those that were captured by their Nazis, that they fell in love with them, and would that be Nazi syndrome or House of Lords syndrome? How do we classify those? Nazification.
Nazification / mass formation, same. It is mass formation in its glory and pride, so to speak. You have the vertical information flow, and all that was done after that period of time is that was, the importance of taking total control over the media technology to be able to keep the vertical information flow in combination with the German school, and then you get a certain population. German school, short, straight, and simple, just using the frontal cortex of the brain, and of course the snake brain as well. If you use those two together and you skip the one in the middle, the limbic part of the brain, where you have the critical thinking, where the storytelling comes in. You need to tell a story to make things, to it's like a starter engine for the brain. It's like you're having a very, very hard to start engine. It's been standing for a long time. Then you need to tell a story that will awake that, so that the limbic system in the main part of your brain start to work. So that's what we are doing. Should you consider that a decent, a good enough answer?
I do. I thank you for the answer. That actually makes a lot of sense. Sometimes it's easier to produce something else out of what's going on, right? Rather than walk back and try the new thing, like as though the thing that's happening hadn't happened. So,
exactly,
yes, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, but as soon as you are able to handle what is happening, the news and so on, because that's pretty important as well. Exactly like we are going to jump into the Netanyahu, because if you have the backstory, then you understand more of what is said. The word and the sword. All of these things. So it is somebody needs to do this with people, because the school has not done it. So somebody else needs to do it, and that's sort of what we are doing. And of course, the Stockholm bureaucracy, if you have seen the latest videos where I refer to Axel Oxenstierna and Delaware, will point to the origins of what will be the Stockholm syndrome, because the Stockholm bureaucracy, together with the school, with the Prussian school, and the control of information going, it's a one-way vertical, and the one-way vertical is out now. We have too much information right now. It's coming from all over the place. There's so much disinformation, this and that, but to be able to orient yourself in this kind of very hectic informational world we are living in, and the informational warfare that we are living in, that's been ramping up very rapidly since 2016. Well, then you have to back down to history again and understand these things, just like the Stockholm syndrome, or like you have on your profile, Brian, which I hope you never bring down, the comfort model with the Saab on it. When you get to, grasp these things, more or less, doesn't really matter. Well, then you can orient yourself in the complex world that we are living in, and make at least some sense out of it. It's like sensu, actually. It's a combined way of working as an individual with Sensu and the Tolkien instruction book for let's call it as a guidance in a modern world. Does that make sense, or am I just shooting over the target?
No, that makes it does. It makes good sense, and it says a lot about where we stand, as people. I actually, when I sit back and I think about it, I actually kind of prefer the Stockholm Syndrome model rather than the Nazi UK German model. At the end of the day, the thing that's what's really happening here is this that I see. If you don't know what's going on, you always are wondering what's wrong with the world. I'm seeing something, there's something wrong, and I know something's wrong. And then when you begin to become educated about that thing that's wrong, then it's time to assume that, well, they've hid it all along, but now you're the one that's wrong for allowing this to happen. It's because of you. You as the individual didn't do your homework enough, and these things all happen. And now that you know what's going on, you can't do anything about it, but there are ways that you can work yourself in the system and around it. That's what I'm hearing.
The setup is very clever all these nefarious things are happening, but is it my fault? Yeah, it is my fault because I didn't realize it and I didn't do anything. I just allowed it to happen. So then you are in, halfway. Then you have 1 foot into the Stockholm Syndrome. You are mass formatted by the ordinary thing to a certain degree. Everybody is. And then you will just sort of blame yourself and go to the shame. And then you will end up in a bad situation and not doing anything. You will be pacified according to the comfort model. It's actually the comfort model in 2 steps.
Yes, I agree.
Okay, we can see the Congress is opening up right now. So I will...
just quickly, I was listening to them talk about that. If you come back to it, that's fine. Would love to hear more on it. But yeah, the grilling of him and the woman before that was questioning him.
The Ukrainian lady, she was badass.
Oh, wow. She was so badass. But she was so badass with the attitude of she made it clear to be known they have an entire lobbying group off to the side there that is ready to do something about guns. And that's what that's going to be all about.
Yeah, they're working on that. So, Brian, let's get back to it and let's see what they have to say. And Elon is actually in place, which is a little bit odd and interesting. Let's see what Netanyahu and these boys have to say. So I will turn down my mic a little bit and I will get the sound from the Congress. Or actually Senate. I don't know. It doesn't matter. I see. There are a couple of minutes left here. I think they are waiting somebody. They just started to talk in a little bit, very short. They probably said it's 5 minutes to go or whatever. So I see Alex, I see Stefan, I see Silver Surfan. Oh, Brian. Did Brian drop? I cannot see him on my screen. Well, he will be back.
He's still here.
Okay, good thing. I can't see him. He's gone on my screen. At least he went down to be listener. But, Brian, please open your mic and say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 there, so we know that you are still in the speakers panel. Yeah, I get your mic. Yeah, he lost the mic. Let's see if I'm not succeeding, Tony or Secretary, please bring Brian up.
Yes, it worked.
Here
Thank you. Yeah, I can hear you. I'm just fine. I stepped down. I thought I was not hearing something, but I was just going to be a listener. But I'll sit a while.
You don't need to drop your speaker. There will come some more speakers, but I'm watching this. Actually, I managed to get the technology working, so I have visuals on the live stream, but I can't stream the sound. Of course, there is some kind of way that you actually can stream something up in the Jumbotron, but I'm not there yet. I'm happy that sound is much worse than picture to get working. So we will get there eventually. I think this could be. You heard about that Zelensky and China. Zelensky has approached China for peace talks.
Yes, Jesus.
Yeah, everything is going in such a speed now that is totally amazing.
Well, they went to the actual regulators, right, for the internet. Though the House of Lords.
Yeah.
Even though Germany did the UK put forward that they had passed the first universal worldwide legislation concerning digital, it does revert back to Russia in many ways, and the way that that's going right now, China is turning out to be the AI regulator doing the work for Russia. Wow, that's killer.
Yeah, they cooperate. The BRICS countries do that. They just finished part of the Silk Road and so on. I put it out with the trains. So the trains are running smoothly between, China and Iran and other countries right now. So this is a paradigm shift. No more, no less.
Big time. Yes.
That was amazing. It will be very good that those trains are running now.
Yeah. I mean, this is a long time coming, but when are you going to tell people? Because they are not going to listen until they are under the gallows, so to speak. So it is what it is. Even if you try to tell it 10 years ago, it's actually more than 10 years ago when they started to drop their own Atlantic cables and so on, just to make sure, that they have the infrastructure in any case. I think now it's not going to be a problem at all with regards of what has happened with, Ericsson, Space Force, Trump, and all of this. There still is a Hail Mary, of course. This could go sideways at any moment in time if the oligarchy have been smart enough and so on. But what I'm seeing is that they are throwing the sub-oligarchs underneath the bus. Totally. So I assume that we are on a road to multipolar world and with sovereign countries that might be able to have peace. I don't know, but I assume it. Everything points in that direction.
Well, I think you're right. I think you're right. But I think there's going to be a big push between, the private sector, how things happen privately versus shipping publicly, openly, right? So that we're seeing the big fight here in the States against the trucking industry, the union literally battling for that position. They can't guarantee that everything's on the ticket like it's supposed to be and done right unless they're in control of it. That's the way the union sees it. So, yeah.
Yeah, Mary Anderson, that's the union. Check her out. I post that tweet in between. This is so hilarious. That's Woodrow Wilson, and when this is developing.
Well, you're right. Based on the last studies, though, for GDP, gross domestic product, we'd talked about this before, right? I'd made mention before, the CBI, the Confederate British Industry, controlled the big six, right? And then that, after the 60s, when they took it over, that turned into the big five, right? Now they're busting that down to the big three. But the CBI, the Confederate British Industry, control not only upwards 200,000+ businesses across the supply chain, it's guesstimated now, 400,000 businesses across the supply chain and the tech. And we just watched, sorry, not trying to say too much, but the big tech firm, Google, just tried to make merger with Wiz, but they backed out of it. They done their little mingle with the technology thing, and then they stopped the deal. And now they've said that they're going to release their own IPO. Wiz is, it's a huge giant of the Europe. So,
Yeah,
it was almost a mirror image of what happened. You remember when Ericsson and Intel, Microsoft, they done that right before all of this kind of blew up, like a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, I think it's been now. They had done a small merger. They had perfected or are in the process of perfecting the splicing between laptop and cell phone. That bridge, that was Ericsson that's provided all of this to you and to us and everybody that's going after them and talking shit about it. And I'm not, but I am. But the point is the splicing between the new hacker line between phone access and computer access and being able to control either or. Yeah, that was provided to you by Ericsson also.
Yeah, I'll run into some technical difficulties here.
Yeah, Brian, I remember that what you're talking about.
Yes, sir. That was major. It was very important because Intel, Microsoft is now opened up 2 data regions, one in Taiwan and one in, what is it there on the other side of Australia? Anyway, they're diversifying.
Give me a sec. I lost the first channel. I do it all over again. They are starting it now, so let's hope and pray. Give me a second. Oh, we lost the Congress just when Mr. Netanyahu is supposed to take the tower or the podium. Yeah, he's there.
Well, the dead air is killing me. I'm kind of one of the old radio host style types, you know. There was no such thing back in the day, ladies and gentlemen, as dead air. That was not allowed. Um, so if you're enjoying the content that is being provided to you, make sure that you touch the purple pill bottom right on your device. Make sure that you like and share this with your friends and others that you might know. That way they may be able to join and be informed or entertained also.
Yeah, got him. It took a while. So guys, let me introduce to this marvelous space with all you people.
From Ray Luxembourg, Mott Bombadil.
Yeah, we are getting there now. So here we go.
Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, Senator Ben Cardin, Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, Senators, members of Congress, distinguished guests. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you for giving me the profound honor of addressing this great citadel of democracy for the fourth time. We meet today at a crossroads of history. Our world is in upheaval. In the Middle East, Iran's axis of terror confronts America, Israel, and our Arab friends. This is not a clash of civilizations. It's a clash between barbarism and civilization. It's a clash between those who glorify death and those who sanctify life. For the forces of civilization to triumph, America and Israel must stand together. Because when we stand together, something very simple happens. We win, they lose. And my friends, I came to assure you today of one thing: we will win. Ladies and gentlemen, like December 7th, 1941, and September 11th, 2001, October 7th is a day that will forever live in infamy. It was the Jewish holiday of Simchat Torah. It began as a perfect day, not a cloud in the sky. Thousands of young Israelis were celebrating at an outdoor music festival. And suddenly, at 6:29 a.m., as children were still sleeping soundly in their beds in the towns and kibbutzim next to Gaza, suddenly heaven turned into hell. 3,000 Hamas terrorists stormed into Israel. They butchered 1,200 people from 41 countries, including 39 Americans. Proportionately, compared to our population size, that's like 20 9/11s in one day. And these monsters, they raped women, they beheaded men, they burnt babies alive, they killed parents in front of their children, and children in front of their parents. They dragged 255 people, both living and dead, into the dark dungeons of Gaza. Israel has already brought home 135 of these hostages, including 7 who were freed in daring rescue operations. One of those freed hostages, Noor Gamani, is here in the gallery, sitting near my wife, Sarah. On the morning of October 7th, the entire world saw Noah's look of desperation as she was violently abducted to Gaza on the back of a motorcycle. I met Noah's mother, Leora, a few months ago. She was dying of cancer. She said to me, "Prime Minister, I have one final wish. I wish to hug my daughter Noah one last time before I die." 2 months ago, I authorized a breathtaking commando rescue operation. Our special forces, including a heroic officer named Arnon Zmora, who fell in this battle, rescued Noah and 3 other hostages. Noah, I think it's one of the most moving things. When Noah was reunited with her mother, Leora, and her mother's last wish came true. Noah, we're so thrilled to have you with us today. Thank you. Many hostage families are also here with us today, including Eliyahu Bibas. Eliyahu Bibas is the grandfather of those 2 beautiful red-headed boys, the Bibas boys, toddlers. And they were taken hostage with their mother and and Eliyahu's son. The entire family was taken hostage. 2 beautiful red-haired children taken hostage. What monsters. And with us also is Iris Chaim, whose son Yotam bravely escaped Hamas captivity with 2 other Israelis, and tragically they were killed making their way back to our lines. We have with us also the families of American hostages. They're here. The pain these families have endured is beyond words. I met with them again yesterday, and I promised them this: I will not rest until all their loved ones are home, all of them. As we speak, we're actively engaged in intensive efforts to secure their release, and I'm confident that these efforts can succeed. Some of them are taking place right now. I want to thank President Biden for his tireless efforts on behalf of the hostages and for his efforts to the hostage families as well. I thank President Biden for his heartfelt support for Israel after the savage attack on October 7th. He rightly called Hamas sheer evil. He dispatched 2 aircraft carriers to the Middle East to deter a wider war. And he came to Israel to stand with us during our darkest hour, a visit that will never be forgotten. President Biden and I have known each other for over 40 years. I want to thank him for half a century of friendship to Israel and for being, as he says, a proud Zionist. Actually, he says a proud Irish American Zionist. My friends, for more than 9 months, Israel's soldiers have shown boundless courage. With us today, is Lieutenant Avichai Reuven. Avichai is an officer in the Israeli paratroopers. His family immigrated to Israel from Ethiopia. In the early hours of October 7th, Avichai heard the news of Hamas's bloody rampage. He put on his uniform, grabbed his rifle, but he didn't have a car. So he ran 8 miles to the front lines of Gaza to defend his people. You heard that right. He ran 8 miles, came to the front lines, killed many terrorists, and saved many, many lives. Avichai, we all honor your remarkable heroism. Another Israeli is with us here today, and he's stand up right next to Avichai. This is Master Sergeant Ashraf al-Bakhiri. Ashraf is a Bedouin soldier from the Israeli Muslim community of Raat. On October 7th, Ashraf, too, killed many terrorists. First, he defended his comrades in the military base, and he then rushed to defend the neighboring communities, including the devastated community of Kibbutz Be'eri. Like Ashraf, the Muslim soldiers of the IDF fought alongside their Jewish, Druze, Christian, and other comrades in arms with tremendous bravery. A third hero, Lieutenant Asa Sofer, is also here with us. Asa fought as an officer in the Tank Corps, and he was wounded in battle. He was wounded in battle while protecting his fellow soldiers from a grenade. He lost his right arm and the vision in his left eye. He's recovering, and incredibly, within a short time, Asa will soon return to active duty as a commander of a tank company. I just learned there is a fourth hero here, Lieutenant Jonathan Ben Chamo, who lost a leg in Gaza and continued to fight. My friends, these are the soldiers of Israel, unbowed, undaunted, unafraid. As the Bible says, Am kelavi yakum. They shall rise like lions. They have risen like lions. The lions of Judah, the lions of Israel. Ladies and gentlemen, the men and women of the IDF come from every corner of Israeli society. Every ethnicity, every color, every creed, left and right, religious and secular. All are imbued with the indomitable spirit of the Maccabees, the legendary Jewish warriors of antiquity. With us today is Yechiel Leiter, the father of one of those Maccabees. Yechiel's father escaped the Holocaust and found refuge in America. As a young man, Yechiel moved to Israel and raised a family of 8 children. He named his eldest son, Moshe, after his late father. Moshe became an exemplary officer in one of our elite commando units. He served with distinction for 2 decades while raising 6 beautiful children of his own. On October 7th, Moshe volunteered to return to combat. 4 weeks later, he was killed when a booby-trapped mine exploded in a tunnel shaft right next to a mosque. At his son's funeral, Yechiel said this: "If the state of Israel had not been established after the Holocaust, the image engraved in our collective memory would have been the photograph of that helpless Jewish boy in the Warsaw Ghetto holding his hands up in the air with Nazi rifles pointed at him. But because of the birth of Israel, Yechiel continued, because of the courage of soldiers like my son Moshe, the Jewish people are no longer helpless in the face of our enemies. Yechiel, please rise so we can honor your son's sacrifice. And I pledge to you and to all the bereaved families of Israel, some of whom are in this hall today, the sacrifice of your loved ones will not be in vain. It will not be in vain because for Israel, never again must never be an empty promise. It must always remain a sacred vow. And after October 7th, never again is now. My friends, defeating our brutal enemies requires both courage and clarity. Clarity begins by knowing the difference between good and evil. Yet incredibly, many anti-Israel protesters, many choose to stand with evil. They stand with Hamas. They stand with rapists and murderers. They stand with people who came into the kibbutzim, into a home. The parents hid the children, the two babies in the attic, in a secret attic. They murdered the families, the parents. They found the secret latch to the hidden attic, and then they murder the babies. These protesters stand with them. They should be ashamed of themselves. They refuse to make the simple distinction between those who target terrorists and those who target civilians, between the democratic state of Israel and the terrorist thugs of Hamas. We recently learned from the National Security Director, U.S. Director of National Intelligence, that Iran is funding and promoting anti-Israel protests in America. They want to disrupt America. So these protesters burn American flags even on the 4th of July. And I wish to salute the fraternity brothers at the University of North Carolina who protected the American flag against these anti-Israel protesters. For all we know, Iran is funding the anti-Israel protests that are going on right now outside this building. Not that many, but they're there, and throughout the city. Well, I have a message for these protesters. When the tyrants of Tehran, who hang gays from cranes and murder women for not covering their hair, are praising, promoting, and funding you, you have officially become Iran's useful idiots. Some of these protesters, it's amazing, absolutely amazing. Some of these protesters hold up signs proclaiming gays for Gaza. They might as well hold up signs saying chickens for KFC. These protesters chant from the river to the sea, but many don't have a clue what river and what sea they're talking about. They not only get an F in geography, they get an F in history. They call Israel a colonialist state. Don't they know that the land of Israel is where Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob prayed, where Isaiah and Jeremiah preached, and where David and Solomon ruled? For nearly 4,000 years, the land of Israel has been the homeland of the Jewish people. It's always been our home. It will always be our home. It's not only the campus protesters who get it wrong. It's also the people who run those campuses. 80 years after the Holocaust, the presidents of Harvard, Penn, and I'm ashamed to say my alma mater, MIT, couldn't bring themselves to condemn the calls for the genocide of Jews. You remember what they said? They said, it depends on the context. Well, let me give these befuddled academics a little context. Anti-Semitism is the world's oldest hatred. For centuries, the massacre of Jews was always preceded by wild accusations. We were accused of everything from poisoning wells to spreading plagues, to using the blood of slaughtered children to bake Passover matzahs. These preposterous anti-Semitic lies led to persecution, mass murder, and ultimately to history's worst genocide, the Holocaust. Now, just as malicious lies were leveled for centuries at the Jewish people, malicious lies are now being leveled at the Jewish state. No, don't applaud. Listen. The outrageous slanders that paint Israel as racist and genocidal are meant to delegitimize Israel, to demonize the Jewish state, and to demonize Jews everywhere. And no wonder we've witnessed an appalling rise of anti-Semitism in America and around the world. My friends, whenever and wherever we see the scourge of anti-Semitism, we must unequivocally condemn it and resolutely fight it, without exception. And don't be fooled when the blood libels against the Jewish state come from people who wear fancy silk robes and speak in lofty tones about law and justice. Here's a case in point. The prosecutor of the International Criminal Court has shamefully accused Israel of deliberately starving the people of Gaza. This is utter, complete nonsense. It's a complete fabrication. Israel has enabled more than 40,000 aid trucks to enter Gaza. That's 500,000 tons of food. And that's more than 3,000 calories for every man, woman, and child in Gaza. If there are Palestinians in Gaza who aren't getting enough food, it's not because Israel is blocking it, it's because Hamas is stealing it. much for that lie, but here's another. The ICC prosecutor accuses Israel of deliberately targeting civilians. What in God's green earth is he talking about? The IDF has dropped millions of flyers, sent millions of text messages, made hundreds of thousands of phone calls to get Palestinian civilians out of harm's way. But at the same time, Hamas does everything in its power to put Palestinian civilians in harm's way. They fire rockets from schools, from hospitals, from mosques. They even shoot their own people when they try to leave the war zone. A senior Hamas official, Fatri Hamad, boasted, listen to this, he boasted that Palestinian women and children excel at being human shields. His words, excel at being human shields. What monstrous evil. For Israel, every civilian death is a tragedy. For Hamas, it's a strategy. They actually want Palestinian civilians to die so that Israel will be smeared in the international media and be pressured to end the war before it's won. This would enable Hamas to survive another day and, as they vowed, to carry out October 7th again and again and again. Well, I want to assure you, no matter what pressure is brought to bear, I will never allow that to happen. The vast majority of Americans have not fallen for this Hamas propaganda. They continue to support Israel. And I want to say thank you, America, and thank you, senators and House members who continue to support us, continue to support Israel, continue to support the truth and see through the lies. But as for the minority that may have fallen for Hamas's cons job, I suggest you listen to Colonel John Spencer. John Spencer is head of urban warfare studies at West Point. He studied every major urban conflict. I was going to say in modern history. He corrected me, no, in history. Israel, he said, has implemented more precautions to prevent civilian harm than any military in history and beyond what international law requires. That's why, despite all the lies you've heard, the war in Gaza has one of the lowest ratios of combatants to non-combatants casualties in the history of urban warfare. And you want to know where it's lowest in Gaza? It's lowest in Rafah. In Rafah. Remember what so many people said? If Israel goes into Rafah, there'll be thousands, maybe even tens of thousands of civilians killed. Well, last week, I went into Rafah. I visited our troops as they finished fighting Hamas's remaining terrorist battalions. I asked the commander there, how many terrorists did you take out in Rafah? He gave me an exact number, 1,203. I asked him, how many civilians were killed? He said, Prime Minister, practically none, with the exception of a single incident where shrapnel from a bomb hit a Hamas weapons depot and unintentionally killed 24 people. The answer is practically none. You want to know why? Because Israel got the civilians out of harm's way, something people said we could never do, but we did it. These heroes here today, the heroic soldiers of Israel, should not be condemned for how they're conducting the war in Gaza. They should be commended for it. I want to thank all of you here today who forcefully opposed the false accusations of the ICC and stood up for the truth. These lies are not only libelous, they're downright dangerous. The ICC is trying to shackle Israel's hands and prevent us from defending ourselves. And if Israel's hands are tied, America is next. And I'll tell you what else is next. The ability of all democracies to fight terrorism will be imperiled. That's what's on the line. So let me assure you, the hands of the Jewish state will never be shackled. Israel will always defend itself. My friends, in the Middle East, Iran is virtually behind all the terrorism, all the turmoil, all the chaos, all the killing. And that should come as no surprise. When he founded the Islamic Republic, Ayatollah Khomeini pledged, "We will export our revolution to the entire world." We will export the Islamic revolution to the entire world. Now ask yourself, which country ultimately stands in the way of Iran's maniacal plans to impose radical Islam on the world? And the answer is clear. It's America, the guardian of Western civilization and the world's greatest power. That's why Iran sees America as its greatest enemy. Last month, we heard a revealing comment, ostensibly about the war in Gaza, but about something else. It came from the foreign minister of Iran's proxy, Hezbollah, and he said this: "This is not a war with Israel. Israel," he said, "is merely a tool. The main war, the real war, is with America." Iran's regime has been fighting America from the moment it came to power. In 1979, it stormed the American embassy. It held scores of Americans hostage for 444 days. Since then, Iran's terrorist proxies have targeted America in the Middle East and beyond. In Beirut, they killed 241 US servicemen. In Africa, they bombed American embassies. In Iraq, they supplied explosives to maim and kill thousands of American soldiers. In America, they actually sent death squads. They sent death squads here to murder a former Secretary of State and a former National Security Advisor. And as we recently learned, they even brazenly threatened to assassinate President Trump. But Iran understands that to truly challenge America, it must first conquer the Middle East. And for this, it uses its many proxies, including the Houthis, Hezbollah, and Hamas. Yet in the heart of the Middle East, standing in Iran's way, is one proud pro-American democracy, my country, the State of Israel. That's why the mobs in Tehran chant death to Israel before they chant death to America. For Iran, Israel is first, America is next. So when Israel fights Hamas, we're fighting Iran. When we fight Hezbollah, we're fighting Iran. When we fight the Houthis, we're fighting Iran. And when we fight Iran, we're fighting the most radical and murderous enemy of the United States of America. And one more thing. When Israel acts to prevent Iran from developing nuclear weapons that could destroy Israel and threaten every American city, every city that you come from, we're not only protecting ourselves, we're protecting you. My friends, if you remember one thing from the speech, remember this. Our enemies are your enemies. Our fight is your fight, and our victory will be your victory. Ladies and gentlemen, that victory is in sight. Israel's defeat of Hamas will be a powerful blow to Iran's axis of terror. Another part of that axis, Hezbollah, attacked Israel on October 8th, a day after the Hamas attack. It has launched thousands of missiles and drones against us. 80,000 of our citizens in northern Israel evacuated their homes, becoming effectively refugees in their own land. We are committed to returning them home. We prefer to achieve this diplomatically. But let me be clear. Israel will do whatever it must do to restore security to our northern border and return our people safely to their homes. Last Friday, a third Iranian proxy, the Houthis, attacked Tel Aviv with a deadly drone. It exploded a few hundred feet from the American consulate, killing one person and injuring 9. On Saturday, I authorized a swift response to that attack. All our enemies should know this. Those who attack Israel will pay a very heavy price. And as we defend ourselves, on all fronts, I know that America has our back. And I thank you for it. All sides of the aisle, thank you. My friends, for decades, America has provided Israel with generous military assistance, and a grateful Israel has provided America with critical intelligence that saved many lives. We've jointly developed some of the most sophisticated weapons on earth. I choose my words carefully. We've jointly developed some of the most sophisticated weapons on earth that help protect both our countries. And we also help keep we help keep Americans' boots off the ground while protecting our shared interests in the Middle East. I deeply appreciate America's support, including in this current war. But this is an exceptional moment. Fast-tracking U.S. military aid can dramatically expedite an end to the war in Gaza and help prevent a broader war in the Middle East. In World War II, as Britain fought on the front lines of civilization, Winston Churchill appealed to Americans with these famous words: "Give us the tools and we'll finish the job." Today, as Israel fights on the front line of civilization, I too appeal to America. Give us the tools faster and we'll finish the job faster. My dear friends, the war in Gaza could end tomorrow if Hamas surrenders, disarms, and returns all the hostages. But if they don't, Israel will fight until we destroy Hamas's military capabilities, end its rule in Gaza, and bring all our hostages home. That's what total victory means, and we will settle for nothing less. The day after we defeat Hamas, a new Gaza can emerge. My vision for that day is of a demilitarized and de-radicalized Gaza. Israel does not seek to resettle Gaza, but for the foreseeable future, we must retain overriding security control there to prevent the resurgence of terror, to ensure that Gaza never again poses a threat to Israel. Gaza should have a civilian administration run by Palestinians who do not seek to destroy Israel. That's not too much to ask. It's a fundamental thing that we have a right to demand and to receive. A new generation of Palestinians must no longer be taught to hate Jews, but rather to live in peace with us. Those twin words, demilitarization and de-radicalization, those two concepts were applied to Germany and Japan after World War II, and that led to decades of peace, prosperity, and security. Following our victory, with the help of regional partners, the demilitarization and de-radicalization of Gaza can also lead to a future of security, prosperity, and peace. That's my vision for Gaza. Now, here's my vision for the broader Middle East. It's also shaped in part by what we saw in the aftermath of World War II. After that war, America forged a security alliance in Europe to counter the growing Soviet threat. Likewise, America and Israel today can forge a security alliance in the Middle East to counter the growing Iranian threat. All countries that are at peace with Israel and all those countries who will make peace with Israel should be invited to join this alliance. We saw a glimpse of that potential alliance on April 14th. Led by the United States, more than half a dozen nations worked alongside Israel to help neutralize hundreds of missiles and drones launched by Iran against us. Thank you, President Biden, for bringing that coalition together. The new alliance I envision would be a natural extension of the groundbreaking Abraham Accords. Those accords saw peace forged between Israel and 4 Arab countries, and they were supported by Republicans and Democrats alike. I have a name for this new alliance. I think we should call it the Abraham Alliance. I want to thank President Trump for his leadership in brokering the historic Abraham Accords. Like Americans, Israelis were relieved that President Trump emerged safe and sound from that dastardly attack on him, dastardly attack on American democracy. There is no room for political violence in democracies. I also want to thank President Trump for all the things he did for Israel, from recognizing Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights, to confronting Iran's aggression, to recognizing Jerusalem as our capital and moving the American embassy there. That's Jerusalem, our eternal capital, never to be divided again. My dear friends, Democrats and Republicans, despite these times of upheaval, I'm hopeful about the future. I'm hopeful about Israel because my people, the Jewish people, emerged from the depths of hell, from dispossession and genocide. And against all odds, we restored our sovereignty in our ancient homeland. We built a powerful and vibrant democracy, a democracy that pushes the boundaries of innovation for the betterment of all humanity. I'm hopeful about America because I'm hopeful about Americans. I know how much the people of this country have sacrificed to defend freedom. America will continue to be a force for light and good in a dark and dangerous world. For free peoples everywhere, America remains the beacon of liberty its extraordinary founders envisioned back in 1776. Working together, I'm confident that our two nations will vanquish the tyrants and terrorists who threaten us both. As Israel's Prime Minister, I promise you this: no matter how long it takes, no matter how difficult the road ahead, Israel will not relent, Israel will not bend. We will defend our land, we will defend our people, we will fight until we achieve victory. Victory over liberty, rather victory of liberty over tyranny, victory of life over death, victory of good over evil. That's our solemn commitment. And we will continue to work with the United States and our Arab partners to transform a troubled region from a backwater of repression, poverty, and war into a thriving oasis of dignity, prosperity, and peace. In this noble mission, as in many others, Israel will always remain America's indispensable ally. Through thick and thin, good times and in bad, Israel will always be your loyal friend and your steadfast partner. On behalf of the people of Israel, I came here today to say thank you, America. Thank you for your support and solidarity. Thank you for standing in Israel, with Israel, in our hour of need. Together we shall defend our common civilization. Together we shall secure a brilliant future for both our nations. May God bless Israel, may God bless America, and may God bless the great alliance between Israel and America forever.
Well, that was quite that was quite a speech, wasn't it? We need to learn. We need to listen. That's the way it goes. As I posted, he goes all in at this moment in time. He really does. Let's see if we have a follow-up speaker or what will happen. So
He
we
spoke
are.
to he spoke to my heart in a big
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
Everybody
He
that
actually
believes in
offers.
God, everybody that believes in God and believes that is real and that they're chosen of God, he just brought them to life. Yeah, that was a very powerful speech.
Very powerful
Touched my
speech.
heart.
Very
Yeah.
very good speech. Anyways, the question still remains then, if you know the background of this, of the created eternal war, you know that Netanyahu is very aware of the deep state and the bankers and so on. So, and he's leaving the door open, as I see it, for a Abraham alliance, in somehow way, shape, or form, or whatever. So it's a chess game. Let's see where it ends up, but quite interesting. I'm curious if we are going to have another speaker, so I'm going to watch out. I'm going to bring the volume down on the virtual a little bit here. Yeah, good thing. There's like selfie or groupie photo ops and. But yeah, let's see where this one will end. Everything is between a rock and a hard place.
Well, they tend to keep mentioning democracy. They tend to keep mentioning democracy.
Rules-based world order democracy. So that's just bullshit. No place for political violence and so on, and all of this kind of repeated messages. Repetition, the mother of learning.
I bet the American did. I wonder if we could take a survey on that. Did the American people know that Donald Trump was bringing democracy back to America, or to America for the first time?
You don't really have democracy in a republic. You have the right to vote.
Exactly.
So that's a different thing, actually.
One interesting thing with this speech that you could hear every person with an AIPAC man was applauding very enthusiastically.
Yes, I noticed that also. Yes, they were very vigorous.
There is AIPAC everywhere.
This enthusiasm you can't find in the Swedish parliament. This is beyond everything.
Yeah,
I was looking over.
Well, it's a big deal. Yep. Go ahead, Brian. Sorry.
Just quickly, Maud, I was looking over your timeline, and you posted the one on Hakeem Jeffries. He's one of the. Do you remember they kind of done the same thing, sort of centering around him here, not so recently, and well, there's that they've been kind of doing the same thing. You remember they in the House on the House floor, they took to cheering for Nancy Pelosi every chance they got. You remember here recently,
Yeah.
those speeches here. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's
that seems to
crazy.
be kind of becoming a thing. Yeah.
Yeah. It is a theater. Though Netanyahu gets like 5 out of 5 for his speech, there is no stumbling. It's very clear. He gets the message delivered, punchline after punchline. So he's a very skilled speaker.
Netanyahu is one of the very great talents in the world. His IQ is around 160, 165. He can dupe about everyone, and he proved it in this speech. He was very convincing, and I think like 90% of the sheep just followed him like they should do.
As expected.
I would give him a 190. I would give him a 190. Let's go better than that, because he actually gained from this speech also.
165 is very, very, very high, and he is actually up at this level.
But
you can inflate it, but
is he trying to pull something off? I think he's pulling something off.
Yeah, he's building opinion.
But he's getting ready to get rid of the bankers,
Oh, yeah.
Well, actually, this is openly the first time that he's come out since these attacks and since this administration, right? This is the first time that he's come out and openly praised Trump for the Abraham Accords. Wow. And that was powerful the way that he done it this time also, and what that means.
You know that deal is far much better than the Oslo Accords. Just to just to point it out. Oh, you gotta be kidding! We will have the motormouth, the princess of Delaware that loves Delaware more than anything else. She is coming up, so we're gonna hear the rumbling from that lady very soon. From the current vice president. This is an intense day, isn't it? One of the more intense days ever. So we just keep it rolling. But Charles, I appreciate your point of view. I think we agree on much of it. I mean, the thing is that the eternal war created in that region long time ago. Of course, it needs to erupt or change or, come to an end at some point in time. It's not like it had to be. So I think Netanyahu has, he's pulling. And he is doing this at the same time as Zelensky is calling out for China to do the peace treaty between Ukraine and Russia. So and it's all in one day. It's within hours. So I think it will push, the sleeping ones to realize that there is something happening. When you get all of this in one day, and it has to be shown in the mainstream media as well. And they cannot do anything about it anymore. They just have to. They soon just have to tug along. They can, sit in the studios and talk the bullshit, but they still have to say, China is gonna host the peace treaties with Russia.
I believe that it's I believe that it's a little bit too early to draw some conclusions about the chess that Zelensky is playing. It could as well be just a way of buying time to mobilize more weapons and everything, and they are still aligned.
Well, he's he's used China one time before, and he got slapped over the fingers, so he will not use that again.
Well,
Yes.
just quickly, guys. Now let's draw in the focus.
He is not that. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead, Brian.
Let's draw in the focus just quickly. With everything here on the forefront. Oh gracious, I lost my thought there.
I told about Zelensky making his chest move, and this is just a bluff. And then you got your thought.
Well, as much as I think it might be a bluff, no, I'm not sure of that. He pointed out two things in his speech. Okay, that Benjamin Netanyahu made a big, huge, flaming statement. Okay, that I think like you said, I agree with you. We need to give it more time and let's see how the mainstream media actually portray this, because he used hard trigger words. He said, "We will continue to fight." He said, "We will continue to win." Those are Trump's dedicated words. You understand that? So he threw those out there also the exact same way that Trump does, in that fashion of, we're going to win. Everything we do from here out, we're going to win. Right? So that should be inflaming. We'll see how that goes, maybe.
It's a very interesting history.
Yes, you have valid points, Brian, I think.
Let's see if Boris Johnson pops up here in the China thing. But Charles, I'm he pulled the China strings one time before, just a little bit. So, and he got slapped on the fingers. So I don't think Zelensky has so much maneuver room there. But it depends on if Zelensky is actually, he had to do this to save Ukraine. Maybe it is. You don't know. None of us know the real true backstory.
Yes, it's totally up in the air. But Zelensky knows he's screwed. He's totally screwed.
In that perspective, but if he had been playing all along with it had to happen, but it had to be, so I'm not counting out that Zelensky actually has been, in such a bad position that he had to make all of this happen.
Yes,
from his side.
Actually, I don't know how closely you're following the combat line, but
I'm following it mainly to the Duran and therewith and what is his name? They have analyzed that guy who does the analysis. I check that for 50 minutes every week.
Yeah, I'm following the combat line like 2 times every day. And the only part where they're having some kind of success is in Kharkiv region in the north. Before the NATO summit, they had some success in Lipsy. But now after the NATO summit, they gave it all back. They're having some kind of progress in resistance in Vovchansk and in the forest in the southern Kupiansk region. But if you look in the rest of the regions, they are losing very badly. They are losing a village per day. They are having heavy losses. They are surrounded in multiple areas. It's actually sad to see. I've been following this for like 2 or 3 years, 2 years now.
Yes.
And it's really bad. So maybe that it's true.
It is. From the get-go, it's bad because unfortunately it had to happen. So
yeah, so maybe it's true.
Well,
maybe he knows.
No, I agree with you. That's very feasible. And I was actually going to kind of paint it like a football game, sort of in the fourth quarter, down by 2 touchdowns, and maybe they just scored a touchdown, but now it's been turned over back to them. Now the ball's in their hands, and right.
Yeah,
Right.
they are. Yes, you are correct. They did a push before the NATO summit, but now they are losing heavily. I think they are depleted actually, because when you listen at the combat line, all the brigades are showing disbelief. It's very bad situation. So maybe it's true. Maybe it's true for real, because they don't have any option. This is the best time. They can't get any better option to negotiate than this.
I mean, is it do you would I dare to say it's fake it until you make it? Or because we've always known that they outnumber us. Let's be honest, the evil outnumber the good greatly, whether we like that fact or not. So
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. You don't need to like it. But it's a brute truth. It's a fact. But I hope they will bring peace to the country. That's my point. Because this cannot continue. We are like eradicating white people in Europe. This is a disaster. And Ukraine will not raise ever. They are in so deep debt. They are BlackRock put up a emergency bank. I'm sure that Sweden will go in with hundreds of billions of crowns, as they always do. But they will be forever in debt, and BlackRock will harness every project, and they will buy up everything of value.
You're absolutely right. And I saw this coming also exactly as you described, and getting worse, escalating since, let's say, 10 years ago.
Yes.
10 years
I
ago.
agree.
Do you remember Vladimir Putin restructured their constitution and cut off immigration in a certain way, and he addressed his people and told the Russian population that it was time, based on the wars, the plagues, the hardships that their people had faced, from such as the fallouts of nuclear, the bombs and radiation poisoning, all of that. They said that he made the announcement that it was time for their people to start refreshing their people, to bring back the Russian people instead of bringing in people to keep up their bloodlines, because their people were going downhill. But now they've got that back under control. He reconstituted their constitution around their people and cut off their borders in many ways. So he was way ahead of the game on these measures, where it's blown the other nations away literally in 10 years. And I agree with you strongly what you said. Yeah, go ahead. You were cooking, man.
Yeah. Putin had a speech in Munich in 2008, when he still was at good terms with most of Europe. They actually applauded him on that speech heavily, where he told that Ukraine is not going. Ukraine is not. You do not move your borders into Ukraine.
Right. That's right.
And actually, 6 years earlier, Russia, Putin himself, he asked about the possibility to join NATO, and the US just told no. That's when they told.
Right. That was a flat out no at the time. I remember. Good remembrance there. Thank you. Good say.
Yeah, that was a really strong signal to tell Russia, you are our enemy. And that's what actually broke everything for until now. And actually for like 20 years to come, maybe 30 years, we will not live to see the end of this. Because
That's
it will.
actually what's been devastating me quite a good bit. Thank you for mentioning the expansion of NATO 5 times. The fact that he called it out openly with the Tucker Carlson interview and the things that he laid out in that. And I think that he even gave Tucker Carlson a few secrets in his little brochure that he had fixed up for him, and I think the world's in
the doggy bag.
Yeah.
He got it in the doggy bag. Brian, we have a new speaker. So from the small island, the great island of New Zealand, welcome, Pure.
Hi, yeah. Just looking at the speech with Netanyahu, what I was most troubled about was all the people cheering like crazy people at a Beatles concert. And I guess they're cheering because of all the money with tax dollars going over there. They probably get a cut or they get some donation anyway from the APAC or whatever. So that's really troubling. So many people just cheering and cheering for a war criminal who's wanted by law. I don't know if that's constitutionally allowed either, or if they're breaking the Constitution. I have a feeling they're probably breaking the Constitution and acting treasonously if one looked at it properly under law. But I don't know enough about it. Somebody who's an expert on those matters maybe could say more. And
that might not be so easy to just cheering and so on. But as we know, by this hour, we've being into this for a long time, we know that the main of it is of course somewhat and somehow theatrical. So we need just to keep cool and see what really will happen and keep our analysis with regards of that, because there's so many people that are emotional. I'm not saying that you, Pure, because you sound very cool and that is a very good thing. But as soon as you go for the for the left right, the good bad, and your snake brain starts to take over, well, then all the logic goes out the window, doesn't it? So I'm just saying.
I've got a much more grounded view on it. I realized that Likud was helping Hamas and aiding Hamas, and Likud was born of a terrorist organization with Menachem Begin and all that. So Likud has been aiding Hamas and all this, and both members of both parties are wanted by international law. So I see it that way. They're both.
It is like a deep state local derby. It's like a deep state local derby that we are witnessing. With, of course, big losses in civilian lives, which is very tragical. But that is what we are. That is actually what we are seeing. It is crazy, but it is sort of what it is.
Hey, you know something interesting? I was looking at the population graph for the UK, and you know how they've been going on and on, some people have, about the lots of immigrants coming in, young men, oh my goodness. And looking at the population graph, actually, you have a surplus of women all the way through from 18 years old, all the way up. There's a surplus of women, a lack of men. In the United Kingdom, there is a lack of men all the way through the age groups from 18. So there we are. And as I had a really
strongly agree with that. Strongly agree with that.
It's interesting. Hey, I had a geography teacher who was telling me, demonstrating to us, but
it's not just interesting having a conversation here. It's not just interesting. They cater to 65% of the women vote in the U.S. versus, that 65% of, are women.
This is actually this demographic change in immigration is actually due to some international laws about family reunion. In Sweden, we call them ankarbarn. You send one person, a man, young man, to escape, and then he takes his whole family when he has the residence permit. And he's allowed, and we are not allowed to deny him this, because family reunion is like protected by international law. We are seeing this in Sweden. We stopped immigration quite heavily, but we cannot stop family reunion. So we are still at the same numbers as the previous government had for immigration.
Yeah, and to the other person, please come back. I didn't mean to interrupt you. You were saying well. I was agreeing with you strongly. Yeah.
Climate action.
I think Pure is still here, so it's the screen that messes up as per usual. Yeah, but Charles, yeah. I mean, it's the same game book. It's just a matter of adrenaline shots into the dying financial horse to keep it going for a little bit. This is actually the first time in world history that this has been done on a large scale in both Europe and in the US. That's just shooting adrenaline into the horse to make the horse to go one or two more bits, to take it down the road. They don't know how to crash the system this time. The oligarchs had their plan. It didn't work out. Somebody else is running the show now. So it's.
But if I could make the argument at the same time, Mark, they don't know quite what to do without it. We don't know what to do without it. Think about it like this. All we actually truly have when we stop and think about the truth is today. We always live in the light, and we deal with the truth in light in the day, ever present. The monetary system, the money thing, the banking, central bank, it gave people the idea of tomorrow, because tomorrow has the confidence of everything that lives and breathes, man. Tomorrow. The thought that, they sell it,
I agree with you, Brian. It's a selling thing. And now we are having very big problems mounting with BRICS, and the geopolitics is changing so heavily. Countries are leaving. They are afraid of being punished by sanctions, because the US is controlling all the sanctions with their monetary system. And it's a fact, since they seized all the assets for Russia, and now lesser countries are joining, and this is weakening the US dollar. They are actually admitting it themselves. And we will have a real chaos coming. And I think this was all planned. If you read the Agenda 2030, this is just a pre-math to make the digital currency, centrally managed digital currency. If you choose a digital currency, choose a decentralized currency, because then nobody will be in charge. But the Europe has chosen a centralized, of course, because they are totalitarian.
In
Yes,
Britain, a lot
very
of young people.
totalitarian. Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
Thank you.
Sorry, a lot of people are leaving, apparently, Britain, emigrating. So young people seem to not a lot of young people seem to find a better life elsewhere for whatever reason that might be, the cost of living or the low wages or whatever it might be. So yeah, that's a problem. I personally don't like living in Britain. It's too crowded, too expensive. The food isn't that good. I prefer to be somewhere like Spain or Morocco. It's a lot cheaper. Yeah. So I'll be going the other way while people are going over the Mediterranean to go into Europe. I'm going over to Morocco for the cheaper lifestyle and better food.
Well, we're actually going to get to see what happens with the southernmost tip, right? Between Africa, what's going on there, and Argentina, and coming all the way up to Central America, El Salvador. They took a before the halving event, they took a big chunk out of Bitcoin and parked it right there, for a piggy bank, they called it. It didn't matter if any of them liked that or not either. That the same similar thing happened, when Donald Trump wanted to run 2016. You remember they had a big pull out of the market. Well, the next halving event is going to prove, rather, these things will mature by then. Let's put it that way. And I think that El Salvador, with the Superport coming, they've determined the Chicago hub, they've determined to double its size, the international hub there. They've
We did not hear what you were telling us, Mott. It was totally distorted.
Yeah, try that again, brother. Come back.
It is okay. I'm just trying to find the link for Kamala's speech, which is upcoming in a very, very short time. So I will mute myself now and get on with the work to make that live stream come up. So hang on, guys. Hang on. Good conversation. Keep it going.
Excellent. I think we should see a response from Zelensky. This response from Netanyahu. Come at me, please. Give me an idea, Charles. One of you, toss at me the idea that this response from Benjamin Netanyahu should spark another response from the Biden administration and Zelensky. How that's going, right?
What I'm thinking is Netanyahu came here because he knew that Biden was stepping down. He was never at charge, but for the public, he was at charge. So the real ruler came to the Congress speaking, and he tried to gather the forces to continue supporting him. You all know that the first country that the US president goes to after becoming a president is to go to Israel and to pledge his service to Israel. It's always up there, the first thing they do. The irony is that the Muslims are not our friends, and you have your problem in the States from the southern border, but Israel is really not our friends. They are orchestrating this. So it's like having your guard coming and having a speech for you. That's my point of view.
I can reckon with that. I can reckon with that. Okay, so in light of the recent events, go ahead.
Yeah, and I don't believe I know that Ukraine is having heavy losses right now. They have been having like for 4 or 5 months, half a year, very, very heavy losses. But I cannot believe that he's acting as alone. I believe this is sanctioned somehow to, I don't know if they want to finish this. They are happy with the debt they have collected and all the European countries going all in to bankroll this scheme. I don't know, but maybe they are closing it and it's real that he's closing it and they are moving on to something else, Taiwan or I don't know. But I have a hard... Mott had a valid point. He tried to cheat the Chinese people once, and and that he cannot do that again. But I don't know. He's fucked anyway, so maybe he's fucking them again. Pose? Comment, Brian?
Yes. No. I'm following. That led me two different thought ways. I'm going to present just one of them to you.
Thank you.
How about what would it look like in a Pearl Harbor moment in modern times? What's happened in light of what's happened recently with the Japanese, also, heavy losses on their side, and tech industry in certain areas being pressured the way that they are. Zelensky being pressured the way that he is. I mean, unless there's some type of offset to balance, I see another type of... I don't want to say that, the crash happened first in 29 before things really got going, right? It took a little time to see those events reordered in reverse, sort of, before it got a chance to crash. Something would happen to offset the balance so that it, I don't know, didn't, maybe, or that because if something happened, if they even caused an event, a Pearl Harbor moment, that would strengthen the central bank big time.
Yes, you have great thoughts there. I can acknowledge them. We both know for sure that they are stepping up this. If not in this war, they are stepping it up.
Accelerating at a rapid rate with the Putin's, this new international fair and equal international order.
Yes, maybe. Or maybe they are moving to a different area. They had like COVID-19, they had like Black Lives Matter, the refugees welcome, they had like all the campaigns they have been running at us. Maybe they are going on a economical collapse now. I don't know. Is it time for it to implement the digital currency and the totalitarian rulership? I don't know. Is it time already?
It would have to be. Well, not that we suggest it. They're suggesting that the law suggests it.
Absolutely.
It really, if we sit and think about that a little bit, it's actually suggesting that the law suggests that it's that time. And it's not by reason of whether we like it or not, but because it's by demand, and Trump even said himself, that, well, this is what the people have voted for. And if you give them no other choice but to vote for these things, driving it that way, one way or the other on the ticket, you can present the argument any way you want, right? From that point on, and it's in favor of it. So,
yes,
the law would suggest it. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, it's difficult to vision what they have in preparation for us, but I would guess that maybe that's the next thing. I don't know.
Well, we have a new world bank, a new BIS coming up in October. So.
Oh, okay. Please tell me. I've been occupied in other stuff.
That's the BRICS. It's already up and running.
Okay.
They put down their own Atlantic cables 10 years ago. They started with that project. So it's very well prepared, actually.
And because of that, it being well prepared, I think that would actually strengthen.
Brian, hang on for a minute. And Pure, I'm not sure if you please join the conversation and don't be, we are usually we can get along without hands actually, so that's no problem. For me, I always like to be interrupted with questions or whatever, as long as people are not really rude and whatever. So, and these two other guys, you can interrupt them when you want to. So you have a mic, go ahead. I mean, we are not so many here right now. I have the hearings up in the live stream. The Kamala live streams. I'm not sure if she's, doing it or not doing it. But if you guys want to keep the conversation up, just keep on going and we'll be good. I mean, we heard Mr. Ray, the FBI director, answer typically the same questions. So there are, but it's actually a little bit boring, I would say, because it's just dancing around the Christmas tree, sort of. So go ahead, guys. I will mute myself and check a little bit on how it's the things in the Congress hearings with the FBI.
Brian, would you like to dive into the BRICS topic?
I really would. And I feel so bad. I feel like Mark should be streaming that to us, but that's rather boring in my opinion, and I would rather talk to you.
I agree, Brian.
So to dive right into that, to ponder the thought that I was just on there, see, unless they would, even if it's not of all the catastrophes that can happen, right? Unless they had some sort of they would need something, a precipice moment that would strengthen the central bank, that would draw all of them to that one, in my opinion. And that's why I kind of made that statement. And because you were, the way that you were taught, you were describing that in a movement fashion. And that's also what Putin said himself, that BRICS was on the rise like the sun, right? So
absolutely, and I think their only move is to centralize all the countries that did not move yet consider to move or moved into BRICS to unite into this centralized currency. I think that's their move.
Did you notice that between now just hear me out on this a moment. Imagine this thought. They just upped their stake. Russia did. They upped their own stake on the ruble, making it more valuable in turning this over also. Now, strengthening China's central bank also, because they do direct business with them. Both strengthen that the same time. And they've got a third point, which they don't really exploit, but we'll go there, which would be the Central Africa, right? So they support the major overall region of Egypt and Africa. So there's 3 points that they could establish and toss between them, the node of funds or the same way that Switzerland just kind of rolled over the private banking asset into the public banking asset. You get what I'm saying? To be
Yeah.
able to roll it. So they just created themselves a trifecta in advance in preparation of these things. And I witnessed that actually moving into position with the liquidation of the Evergrande affair, because China had already set up and established a secondary option because they knew exactly what I knew all of, that it would come to that, and it was long past time to end it. Do you get what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
this would only strengthen. Well, I'll stop there a moment. Please, what do you think of that?
Yes, I agree with you. It's almost like they are working in tandem, like they are cooperating.
Right.
Because if you look at the sanctions at Russia, Russia seized all the company and they made own companies, and this created a great growth in economy for Russia. It's like a paradox, but that's the truth, because they needed to get self-sustained, and they did. Just look at random video from Europeans in Russia making videos in a random city. It doesn't look that they are suffering very heavy, and I did play a online game with in a faction in a game, and I had like 10 Russians and some Ukrainians and from all over the world. And the Russians, okay, they told they had some kind of inflation like 2 years ago, but after that it stabilized, and they didn't complain. It was like, yeah, they are managing very good, and they got on their feet. So it was a big blowback. And looking at this, and the thing you told about declining dollar and the economy in Western Europe, actually we suffered more. It's like they are working together to create this. I don't know. You know that.
No, you're doing great there, because we witnessed this. You know, Putin even told on it. He openly stated about the currency. Now, I don't know if anybody didn't red flag it themselves, but he said in 1991, when the Soviet Union collapsed, he was talking to Tucker Carlson. Do you remember, sir? It was the funniest, it was the damnedest thing you'd ever heard. And I've been knowing this for years, and it's been denied for years by the Secret Service, by the CIA, by the internals. Okay, it's been denied. But in 1991, when the Soviet Union collapsed, he made the statement that they were willing and welcome. He watched their leaders stand them down and to open their arms to the United States for things, you know. And they didn't. He said that he openly stated they didn't come to them. We didn't make any deals. They went somewhere else. And they know, he said, we know that they did that because the money still came from us. So whoever right. Let's think about that a minute. No matter where they went to do business elsewhere, whether it was Germany, the Reichstag, or Switzerland, guess where the money came from? It means they were doing business right out of Russia's bank.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, their money was used. We all know in Sweden from the mainstream media. I don't know how many are reading that anymore, but they are telling that Russian money funded this climate scam that they are driving from their point of view, and probably they took advantage of of this. World Economic Forum, BlackRock scheme, and just ran with it. I believe, but there are also accusations that I heard this like 15 years ago, that Putin was a part of this scheme.